Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the debut of the Rise and Rush podcast. But better yet, welcome to football season as we see it. Can't wait. A lot of stuff to get into. This is our first morning show, so whatever you're doing, grab a cup of coffee, grab a donut, okay? Whatever you're eating for breakfast, grab it because we're going to be here all morning doing the good stuff. So be sure to share out, like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. But I got to pass it to my panel first. Let's go with Mr. Angry John.
What up, y'all? What up, y'all? Good to be here, rise and shine. And it's about 9:30 in the morning. And we are going to have it all today. We got some game previews, some fantasy advice, some betting. But also, we did that Thursday Night Football. And according to the picks, we're all 0-1. We're all 0-1, boys. We need to have it turned around today because the book says we're all wrong. So, Luca, take it away.
First thoughts. Football is officially back. We had a first taste of it on Thursday with the Lions winning in a close one. Got a whole slate of games today. We'll obviously cover our favorite three, or as I call it, the three that will thrive, as we call it. We'll obviously predict the winners of those games. Sunday Night Football is back. Obviously, Alex does not want to stream the game for some reason, but I went over that a zillion times. But just so good to see that. It's so good to feel that football is back, and I'll be sitting in front of the TV for about 6 hours.
Right, and nothing treats homesick for football like Scott Hansen on Red Zone. So if you have Red Zone, you obviously have that. And if not, well, guess what? You just watch your games in your area and you'll be fun with that. So what we have in stock for you guys for this podcast in general is really three main things. And it may or may not be a long show. We do have a guest, by the way, coming in at 10 a.m. That's Mr. Joe Manniello, who's going to give us some betting advice, give you guys some betting advice and all that sort of good stuff. But what I will say is this. We got three game previews, as Luca talked about. We got fantasy starts and sits, and also anyone you got to pick up on the waiver wire. And then at the end, it's probably going to be mixed in because of 10 o'clock Joe's coming in. And then, of course, the betting afterwards. So how about we get into some game previews and educate our audience? Which game shall we start with?
I think we should start with John's game, the Bears and the Packers.
Shout outs to Jacob in the chat. Shouts to Sox. 6:30 a.m. over where he is in the West Coast.
That's a real fan right there.
That is a real loyal guy. He must be getting up for some sort of work or something, or he might just be that excited that NFL football is back. Sox,
I think everybody is.
Football as well. But the first game I guess we'll start with is the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. And I'll headline it, but I'm going to let John take, because the way we did it, guys, is we assigned ourselves each a game that's not a New York game, just to get ourselves a little bit more in tune with the rest of the NFL. But I will headline this, and then I'll let John take it away. You got the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love as the quarterback for the first full year, as we anticipate. And then you got the much improved and very hyped up Chicago Bears with Justin Fields looking to prove it in his third year with Matt Eberflus as the second-year head coach. And they made a ton of improvements this offseason, but I'm going to shut up. We're obviously going to chime in, and we're going to have predictions as well for these games. So I don't wake up this early unless I have to. See, there you go. So he's part of the working man. But John, take it away.
All right, we got a classic rivalry here, Bears Packers. Usually, it's been one-sided, either in recent history or just history in general, as the Packers have been known as the successful franchise and the Bears not so much. But nevertheless, it should be a good one. And you look at how the off seasons went for both these squads, right? Well, you got to look. What did the Packers do? Well, they didn't really spend big in free agency. Okay. They lost some veterans. Obviously, the most notable, Aaron Rodgers, traded away. They lost guys, and half their veterans are now on the Jets, like Lazard, Cobb, those guys. But they lost some key veterans, but they got really younger through the draft, and that's what they want to do. Their first-round pick, Luca Van Ness, pass rusher, That's what they added there. They also added some weapons for Jordan Love, Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave, some guys of note that they took in the second round of this past draft. So they're going to really trust the youth movement, especially with Jordan Love now getting the keys to start this franchise. And also some other notable additions. They got a new kicker in Anders Carlson and new punter in Daniel Wellen. No more Pat O'Donnell and Mason Crosby, who have been there for a while. And like I said, it's the Jordan Love era has started. Okay, it's a new leaf for them. No more Aaron Rodgers for them. They just had a falling out. Some people like to blame Aaron Rodgers. Some people like to blame the Packers. Realistically, it is probably both, even though I'm the Aaron Rodgers defender out of the three of us. And I'm Luca to an extent, but I don't think anyone does it more than me. But nevertheless, some interesting matchups that I did want to point out for this game. And I think that's the keys to this game. First off, and usually originally I was going to do specific players, but I actually have it more positionally. So the first matchup I have is the Packers' interior defensive line against that Bears' interior offensive line. And I think it's going to be a huge one because, the Packers last year, number one, they are horrific against the run. They were bottom 7 in that category. And the Bears are going to try and take advantage of it. Obviously, with them, it's no more David Montgomery. It's going to be Khalil Herbert there. But this is huge for on the Packers side because, they didn't really change much. Obviously, they have Kenny Clark, the veteran. And obviously, Deontay Wyatt's the first-round pick on the defensive line from last year. But I don't know if they changed the personnel enough to a point where, it's even become a strength because the Bears, they tried, upgrading their offensive line. Nate Davis is an average guard in this league. Cody Whitehair's not a bad guard. So they might have some success there. They can succeed running the ball against the Packers. It might even open up the passing game. And I think that's the most important part for that matchup. And before we get into the second matchup, because this has to do more with the Bears, you look at their team, right? And they completely overhauled this team. They had a lot of cap space, right? We saw a lot of the moves that they made in this offseason. And you look at some of the guys. First off, they traded for DJ Moore, an elite receiver, for Justin Fields. They add to the offense line. I mentioned Nate Davis. Their first-round pick, Darnell Wright, the tackle out of Tennessee. A lot of guys questioned him in the draft, but they felt that he was a physical freak, and they really want to take him. They wanted to take him that high. Then they added some guys on defense on that front 7, Yannick Ngakoue and DeMarcus Walker as edge rushers, Andrew Billings there. They added to the linebacker core tremendously, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds. No more Nick Morrow in that linebacker core. But for the Bears, it's all about Justin Fields, taking that next step because it's a lot of key addition, what they added to this team to try and improve him and break out this year. As Jacob also threw another guy out, Tyreek Stevenson, who was a later round pick in their secondary, which pretty solid. But the Bears, the most important matchup for them in this one, I have to say that their wideouts against the their secondary against the Pats wideouts. And the reason I say that is, they upgraded the front 7, but they actually have a solid secondary. You look at some of what they got. They got some youth mixed in with some veterans. Jalen Johnson, I think, is becoming a very underrated corner in this league. I liked what I saw from him last year. Eddie Jackson, the veteran's been a Pro Bowler. I think he's been an All-Pro too, if I'm not mistaken, in the past. Good in coverage. Then you got Jaquan Brisker, another youngster. Kyler Gordon's been solid. So you add Tyreek Stevenson. That's going to be interesting because, the Packers, coming into this game, for anyone that doesn't know, Christian Watson's hurt, which is huge for them because he's probably their number 1 receiver on their depth chart. And also, the Bears, their struggles were, stopping the run last year. But they did have a solid secondary, even though at times it was a bit shaky. But that was probably the best part of their defense while the team was still formidable, I would say. And it's going to be real interesting to see who Jordan Love trusts, how many of these young kids are going to get the snaps. I mentioned Musgrave, Jordan Reed earlier. You also have Romeo Doubs, who's questionable for this game.
He is expected to play, by the way.
Right,
Christian Watson is out. I do have the full injury report when you get a chance.
right. And it's going to be very interesting to see how much they try and run the football. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup, especially on the outside. I really am curious to see who the Bears are, who the Packers are going to target most. So that's the important matchup for the Bears. Alex, if you did want to read the injury report, you can. I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay, so not many injuries, of course, for the Packers. Romeo Doubs is questionable, but according to several reports, he is expected to go today, compared to his teammate Christian Watson, who is out for this game. Anthony Johnson, who's a safety, Rashawn Gary, pass rusher, David Bakhtiari, and Datavian Wicks, the draft pick out of West Virginia, all are expected to play. So it looks like it will just be Christian Watson who's out, and also the 6 other inactives that they'll have to post for game day. I'll get to the Bears in a second, but I do want to shout out Barbara in the chat, Grega in the chat, and also Nimmer in the chat.
And
I'll get to that a little later because Joe is actually going to be not just the 3 games that he's throwing at us, but he's also going to be throwing us local picks as well in terms of betting. So I will get to that later if you want to stay in. But guys, keep your questions coming, comments, all that sort of good stuff. Definitely share out, as I said. This is a morning show we're going to keep doing for the next 17 weeks and even beyond going into the playoffs. So we're going to need a little bit of exposure, but we appreciate you guys. So as for the Chicago Bears on the injury report, they're pretty healthy. Jaquan Brisker was dealing with a groin injury. He is full go. Nate Davis doesn't have a designation. He actually did not practice on Thursday with a personal issue, but he is fine to go. Eddie Jackson, Mercedes Lewis, DeMarcus Walker, and Robert Tonyan. Robert Tonyan is actually questionable, but he was not. Mm-hmm. He was actually put on late from what I see right here. Maybe it was something as of yesterday, but Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, he looked like a full participant in practice, or at least they're not listing it. But the only one who's questionable right now is Robert Tonyan, and even then, if he's out, it's still probably what was I going to say? Even if he's out, a lot of weapons for Justin Fields. So Steven has a question for us. This is a good question. Hey all, Breece Hall or Deion Jackson half PPR?
I was gonna say we can hold off to the fantasy just for a sec, because I don't have every fantasy note in front of me. But hold on to your fantasy questions. I promise I will come back and answer them.
To it, of course.
Promise you that. Nevertheless, before we look at the position battles, I think the key, you look at coming into this game, the Packers, they're being kind of viewed as the underdog here, and it's going to be a tougher challenge because obviously the Bears they were dreadful last year. 3-14. They were not a good defense. All right, I know like I said, the secondary, it had its struggles. They were very not efficient in the pass defense nor the run defense. So, but I think the secondary was probably the most formidable because of the young core they had. But they had the second lowest cap space amounted to players, and they didn't provide Fields with the weapons on offense. And then now after this offseason, they did. Like I said, they got DJ Moore, they got Ngakoue on defense, they got Edwards and Edmonds to help the linebacking core. So with Justin Fields, he's got to try and solidify himself as a bona fide passer in the street because we all know he can run the football. He had 1,100 yards last year. 177 yards per game in the rushing, which is the most in the NFL. So again, really a guy that can run the football, needs to prove himself as a passer. And we're going to see if this rebuilt defense, the weapons and some of the additions on defense, how much they're going to help the Bears. But their biggest key, how they're going to do it is, like I said earlier, they need to establish the run game, and that's going to open up the passing game for this team. And that's because, like I said, the Packers really struggled against the run, and they were better at running the football last year. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Now I know they lost David Montgomery, but Fields is a good enough runner, and the only guy who's on the roster before, the starting running back Khalil Herbert, is very dangerous in the backfield. They also took the 4th round pick. Rashawn Johnson, who is very physical, and he makes a lot of missed tackles, so watch out for him as well. They also added Travis Homer to the roster, if I'm not mistaken. But nevertheless, like, this team is going to run the football, and they need to establish it early, and they need to be efficient with that. But we look into the position battles, and what we all did for these 3 games, we basically said who's got the edge at this position. So we have quarterback all the way down to what we have, and I'll start here. At quarterback, I'm giving the edge to the Bears. I mentioned earlier, Love is more of an unproven commodity, but Justin Fields has got the athleticism and his ability to rush all over the field. Really sets him apart. He just got to establish himself as a passer. Then we look at the running back, and I gave the edge here to the Packers on offense. Aaron Jones has been a solid running back for the Packers for years, actually. And I really like A.J. Dillon, even coming out of college, a very physical second back.
Bruiser.
Like Alex said, a bruiser. And he's really going to, run in between in the trenches and really be a physical complement to Aaron Jones. So that's why I give the Packers the edge there. At wideouts, I got to give it to the Bears, just because they have Mooney and they make the trade for Claypool, who it hasn't worked out fully yet, but he still has a lot of talent. But DJ Moore, I really like that addition. A lot of speed, and he's proven that he can be productive with the subpar quarterback play. So I still think he's going to be very good in this Bears offense, whether Fields develops or not. Then we look at the battle at tight end. I also gave the Bears that edge. Obviously, Cole Kmet, someone who's, even in fantasy, people are starting to like him. Even though Robert Tonyan is questionable in this game, they got him over from the Packers. So again, that is something of note. And even Mercedes Lewis is a blocking tight end, very solid. The Packers would know because they lost him last year too. So Bears are picking at the Packers roster. Then we look at the offensive line battles. And in total, I gave the Packers the overall edge. Why? Because last year, when healthy, they were a very solid unit. That might be one of the best left sides in the game with David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins at left guard. When they were both on the field, they were like a top 6 or top 7 overall offensive line. Because what do they need to do? They need to protect Jordan Love. And when you have a veteran like Bakhtiari who did it, exceptionally well for Rodgers, now they're going to hope he can do it for Jordan Love, who, although Bakhtiari, it was said that he was injured had some injuries during training camp, but he should be a good to go today, as nothing is bothering him now. And so I give the Packers the edge in that, also just because the Bears, they're not like proven yet. They have some pieces, but it's not a complete unit yet on the offensive line. See how the rookie Darnell Wright holds up in his first game at right tackle. Then we look at the defensive side, right? And the defensive line, and now the Packers and Bears, they obviously have a different defense. Packers are in a 3-4, while the Bears are in a 4-3, so a little harder to compare. But in terms of overall, I gave the edge to the Bears on this one. Why? I really like the additions of Ngakoue and Walker, 2 guys that are solid, proven pass rushers, and they can really make a difference to help out this team. They also added Andrew Billings last year, who played with the Raiders, and it was a little hard. The stats were all over the place, but I feel like, it was hard to tell because the Raiders, they were a mess of a team. So
honestly, John, if you're saying edge goes to the Bears, I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Really? Well, yes. Okay, to be fair, the reason I'm saying that is because I just like, I get it. The Packers have very solid edge rushers with Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, and, even some good linebackers that could help out. But I just like what the Bears did there in terms of, we really struggled at getting to the quarterback last year. Let's focus on that. DeMarcus Walker is a guy that could potentially get to like 7 to 10 sacks. And Ngakoue has been a proven Pro Bowler for a number of years, even dating back to his days in Jacksonville, where I believe that's where he first started out. So that's just my opinion, but we can agree to disagree.
My objection is duly noted.
Yes. Now, if you want to say that the Packers have the better outside linebackers, I'll give you that. But the inside linebackers, because want to look at the front seven, the Bears clear this easily, in my opinion. And I know it should be maybe closer because the Packers do have some good linebackers, but TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, that's going to help tremendously. I mean, this defense, like we don't realize that the Bears were 3-14, but they were awful, man. Like especially toward the second half, they were awful. Edmonds and Edwards, they're going to both help stop the run. They're going to stop with the missed tackles because the Bears had so many last year. So that's obviously going to help them even exponentially, in my opinion. And then you have your overall secondary, and I'm giving this edge to the Bears. I know. Look, I get it. The Packers got some players in Alexander and Darnell Savage, but I really like this young core of what they got going. I like the depth too that they added with the youngsters. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm a fan of what the Bears are building there in the back end, like I mentioned earlier. And then the special teams, giving the edge here to the Bears. And it's not. I like Cairo Santos. Trent Taylor and Velez Jones Jr. are decent return men. But the reason I'm doing this is because sometimes it's very hard to overcome stability at a kicker or punter position. And we've seen that with teams. Sometimes teams have it for years and years with Crosby and O'Donnell for the Packers. They've had them for a while. And sometimes it's hard to find new guys right away. So that's why I'm giving my edge to the Bears. Guys, if you have any thoughts before I go into some stat predictions and overall predictions.
Yeah, so just going to be an interesting game. And really an interesting season for these two because obviously there's not a ton of expectations for the Packers this year. I don't know who's predicting what where. Some people have the Packers at like a solid record, maybe like 7, 10, 8, and 9. Shouts to Classy Nasty in this chat. And Steven, of course, we haven't forgotten about your fantasy question. And Josh B says, "Let's go Giants." Yeah, you damn know it right here. But I think it's going to be interesting. I think the battle of the trenches is going to be one of the most interesting to watch. I definitely see Justin Fields having a good ground game. Khalil Herbert's coming, and they've done this so many years with Chicago. I remember because 2018, I got more absorbed into football than I was the first 2 years. They had Jordan Howard, they had Tariq Cohen, then they moved on from Jordan Howard. Then they drafted David Montgomery. Then they moved on from Tariq Cohen. And then now the Khalil Herbert. So they've been flipping running backs in and out. But it's always succeeded well for them. And Khalil Herbert is on one of my fantasy teams, so I'm going to rely on him a little bit. But they also got a couple of solid backups right behind him. So I do expect a bit of a ground game. Again, it's going to be a battle of the trenches. And if it doesn't work well for either side, I think it's going to be a quick passing game. DJ Moore versus Jair Alexander is going to be one of the most anticipated matchups, especially in this game. But really, I'm just mostly looking at the trenches. I'm also looking to see as well what the linebackers do, especially, obviously with some, but not all improvements for the Packers. But the most eyes are going to be on the Bears. Tremaine Edmonds came over from Buffalo. TJ Edwards, he came over as the top linebacker from the Eagles. So they signed the 2 high-priced free agents, and they should be top 10, maybe top 5 against the run this year, expectations-wise. John does mention a point about that young secondary. It's kind of like the Giants in a way, but they're a little bit more experienced back there because they have more experienced safeties. But I think they gotta get to the passer. They got to get to the passer. As I said before, I kind of rate the Packers a little bit more better than the Bears in terms of the trenches because they got Kenny Clark, they got Preston Smith, they got Rashawn Gary. Meanwhile, you do compare to the Bears, DeMarcus Walker, Dominique Robinson, who they drafted, I believe, was this year or last year out of Western Kentucky. Yannick Ngakoue, who's a good pass rusher. He got like 9 sacks last year, but also the problem with him is he cannot play the run. They got Khalid Kareem off of the Bengals. So it's just a couple of guys mixed in there, a couple of unknowns, but overall should fare well for a pretty good game. Luca, do you have any final thoughts in terms of that?
I know in terms of the linebackers we were talking about, I think TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds are going to help vastly when it comes to the run game because I know John mentioned that the Bears struggled with stopping the run, but I think both linebackers are going to prevent the offensive line, or at least try to prevent the offensive line from going to the second level on certain screen plays, run plays. So it's going to be a lot of just interest me watching linebacking course, see how much of a difference they make on terms of running the football, passing the football on the linebackers. I've seen people comment that Tremaine Edmonds is more of a zone coverage linebacker, and he's not more of a man coverage linebacker, so that'll be interesting. Edwards, I'm not sure what he could do on pass coverage, so we'll obviously see that. But it's going to be a fun game between both teams, obviously divisional rivals. I think the Bears have the edge in this one because, as we said, Romeo Doubs is going to be limited and Christian Watson is hurt.
Right, and I also just want to add this real quickly before we go into our predictions and then our next segment. The Bears were I think the fourth best or the top. They were top 10. No, actually, they were the first best rushing offense in the NFL last year.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst teams, first best rushing offense in the NFL. They ran it the most of any team. Justin Fields was sacked the fourth most, so obviously that played a part in hugely going on the ground game. But again, what I will say is this: I'll come back to this every single time. You got Darnell Mooney. Is Chase Claypool, to my knowledge, is still there. Cole Kmet he's got big expectations a little bit after this contract extension he signed, but it's going to help out Justin Fields. I see this as a 2021 Giants situation. I know I keep comparing to my New York Giants, but I feel like there's more talent surrounding this team than there was in the other team. Just because you have a threat already on the ground, and they were the top rushing team a year ago. I think they have a chance to eclipse that once again, or at least top 5, top 10. And then you add a weapon in DJ Moore who takes the attention off a lot of different other weapons. Again, Cole Kmet and a bunch of other guys as well. So I say we get into some stat predictions and then we move forward.
All right. Some of the stat predictions I have. Justin Fields will be the leading passer today at 250. Aaron Jones will be the lead rusher at 80 yards. Lead receiver today, DJ Moore will be at 110 for Justin Fields. Lead tackler, Tremaine Edmonds at 9. And the lead sacker in today's game, Preston Smith, will get a sack today for the Packers side. Nevertheless, I didn't know if you wanted to look, but according to the book here, according to this wonderful book that we got, you boys have the Bears. And I understand. I just gave a lot of high praise to the Bears. But sometimes history doesn't change. I got the Packers rolling in this one. Got the Packers.
All right. So I'll go out with my stat predictions. Luke will go out his stat predictions, and we'll move on to another segment briefly. So I got Jordan Love, 230 yards passing. Again, I think it's going to be a ground game. Now, it is surprising a little bit that I don't have Aaron Jones as the lead rusher, but also I think the linebackers need to make a direct impact just because of the risen expectations with the Chicago Bears. So I got Justin Fields at 79 yards. Darnell Mooney, I have him as the lead receiver at 87 yards. There were talks about him being traded. Those were not true. And once again, Jair Alexander, he's still one of the best corners in this league. It's going to leave other matchups to go against Darnell Mooney, specifically Rasul Douglas. I think Eric Stokes is still on that team, if I'm not mistaken. If he's not, he's on IR. But I'm looking at the depth chart right now. It looks to be Rasul Douglas, who is known to be a ball hawker, but I think Darnell Mooney has the outright advantage. As far as the lead tackler goes, I got Darnell Savage at 7 tackles to lead. And leading sacker, I got Preston Smith. I'm upping John by a half, so it's 1.5.
Get the extra half.
And then Luca, if you want to go into your stat predictions real quick, and then we could bring on our guest.
Yes. So leading passer, I got to agree with Alex. It's going to be more of a ground game, but actually I looked up the weather report. It's actually supposed to be nicer weather over in Chicago, about 79 degrees and sunny. But regardless, I think it's, again, the game of the trenches. There are two basically somewhat unknown quarterbacks. I know we know more about Fields and his running ability than Jordan Love and his passing ability. So I think the Packers will try to create a game plan suited around helping Jordan Love, where they can create the run game to open up the passing game. It's just going to be interesting whether the Bears eventually adjust with guys like TJ Edmonds and Tremaine TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, where they start stacking the box and make Jordan Love throw it deep. Now, the Bears have a very good secondary. Seamus Heiling, Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson, all those guys. So I'm going to lean more. It's going to be a running game. For Jordan Love, I'm going to say 255 yards. That's not a lot, in my opinion. I think that's a solid day. Justin Fields, I'm going to go 234. I think Fields has finally weapons to throw to, but I think him throwing to the weapons is going to open up the run game a little bit. It's going to be a little inverse. As in terms of the leading rusher, you obviously got Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon on the Packers side. You have Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert on the Bears side. And obviously, John mentioned they also got Rashawn Johnson. Leading rusher for the Packers, I'm going to go Aaron Jones. I think he has 97 yards. I think T.J. Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, kind of confusing to say those names together because they both end with the E, but regardless, I think they'll make somewhat of an impact, but it won't be too much as they'll still have a little bit of holes in the defensive line. And for the Bears, I think the leading rusher will be Khalil Herbert. I'm going to say he gets 105 yards. Leading receiver, I'm going to go DJ Moore. I'm going to say 105 yards, I'll say. And for the Bears, for the Packers, I'm going to go. It's interesting because we already mentioned Romeo Doubs is going to be hurt, but he's going to play. He's very limited. Christian Watson's also hurt. So I'm going to go Luke Musgrave's going to get about 75 yards. I think he's going to be targeted a lot in his debut. I wouldn't be surprised if A.J. Dillon is second in receiving. Leading tackler, I'm going to go with T.J. Edwards. I'm going to give him 8 tackles for the Bears. For the Packers, I'm going to go Devondre Campbell. I think he's going to get about 7 tackles. Leading sacker for the Bears, I think Yannick Ngakoue gets one. For the Packers, I think Preston Smith gets one.
Okay, Luca, we'll make a detour a little bit, and if you want to bring on our guest.
Yes, we will make a detour. We will get to our betting segment, and I'm very honored to bring on our next guest, and that will be Joe Manniello of Newsday Sports. He is our betting guy. Joe, how you doing today, man?
Doing good, guys. How are you?
Doing good.
Good, man.
First
are
thoughts
you guys brothers? You guys are brothers?
Yes.
We are twins.
Well, John's like the adopted brother, I guess, in this scenario. But
You're twins, right? Okay, I thought you might be twins. Okay.
John, Joe, first thoughts on the NFL weekend.
Oh, it's the best. To me, it's the best. One of the best days of the year. Everyone talks about opening day baseball, but I'm a football guy. Week 1, I can't wait for that red zone countdown on my TV, and to me, it's the best. And been waiting. Usually, it feels like a long, long time, but this offseason has been so eventful with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I feel like it went by pretty fast. So I just can't wait. It's going to be a great year.
Yes, Alex has put Joe's Twitter in the bio. Please, guys, follow him. Check him out. Obviously, he also does a weekly spot on Matt O'Leary and Wise channel, a famous Jets content creator with the betting. We're going to get to the betting corner with John and Joe, as I'm going to call it. Joe, what do you have in mind in terms of your best bets for the week? I know you said you were going to do the Jets and Giants bets, the local bets, and some other bets across the NFL, mainly on Sunday. So, Joe, we'll let you have the spot.
Well, you guys were just talking about the Bears game, so I don't want to spend too much time on that. But
Sure.
that's my lock of the week. I love the Bears. I picked them to go 10-7 and be the last wild card. I think Justin Fields is going to have a huge year. They finally got him some weapons, DJ Moore. Like you mentioned, the linebackers. I too was getting confused. Edmonds, Edwards. I was saying, wait, who's who? But I think the Bears are going to surprise a lot of people. So I have them beating the Packers. I think the Packers were one of my under picks in my over/under column. Bears were over, Packers under. I mean, if Jordan Love is good, great for him. But I just don't see it. I think the Packers are spoiled last 30 years with Favre and Rodgers, and I think they're going to have a little come back to earth situation here. I don't see them doing that great. The Packers, I have them going 6-11. So I like the Bears today as my best bet, and then 2 other ones. Before we talk Jets Giants, I like the Steelers a lot today at home, getting 2.5. I think they're an underrated team. I wanted to pick them to go to be a wild card team, but the AFC is just so stacked. So I had the Ravens and the Bengals getting in, but not the Steelers. But I wouldn't be shocked if they get in, even win the division. I mean, I think Kenny Pickett and George Pickens are going to have a good, next year, getting older. And Mike Tomlin, to me, he's one of the most underrated coaches of all time in the NFL. If you look at his record, he just always wins. He's never, ever had a losing season. I think it's 16 years now. It's just incredible. And they got TJ Watt. And the 49ers, I don't think they're overrated, but I feel like I don't know. I'm not really all in on Brock Purdy. He had elbow surgery in the offseason, and I just don't know. I think it's a tough ask to go cross country week 1 at a tough place to play in Pittsburgh with the great fans. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game. I have it 23-20 Pittsburgh outright. So if you want to bet the money line, you can take them too instead of getting the 2.5. And then same division, another team that everyone loves, the Bengals. I picked them last year before the playoffs started to make the Super Bowl, and that didn't happen. But a lot of people are picking them this year. I think they'll be the better team in Ohio this year, but not this week. I like the Browns. Joe Burrow 1-4 against the Browns. For some reason, he never beats them. Last year on Halloween, they got crushed 32-13. And he had the calf injury in the summer. So I think this is a tough ask to week 1. Again, another hostile place to play, the Dog Pound. Myles Garrett chasing you for 60 minutes or 3 hours, however you want to look at it. I think it's going to be a tough spot for them. And they started last year. They started 0-2, so they've been slow starters. So I like the Browns to get the win here outright. They're getting 1.5. So similar situation with the Steelers. Just take them on the money line. But I think both games will be close, and I like a lot of underdogs in the week 1. This is my 9th year doing the picks column, and it's week 1. My best advice is just take a lot of underdogs because there's so much unknown. The spreads are. I took the Lions the other day in the paper. That's actually my Super Bowl pick: Kansas City over Detroit. So the NFL stole my thunder, but I like the Lions covered, and they didn't play a great game. They got a little lucky with a few bounces, but they did play. They did have a strong game, and they held Mahomes at the end. So you got to give them credit. Dan Campbell's done a great job there. So to me, it's all about underdogs. I like some bad teams today to cover, like the Texans and the Colts, just because these spreads are just off. I feel like they might be off a few points, and it's just like sometimes the most obvious picks when a pick is so obvious, like Jaguars, for example. To me, it's the obvious pick of the week. Jaguars -4.5. They're going to crush the Colts, but I don't know. I took the Colts just to go the George Costanza opposite route there and just take a different pick there because I feel there's so many. Everyone thinks they know everything in week 1, and it's like, and then week 2 is the opposite. It's such an overreaction, like, oh, so and so is going to win, and then it's like, no, they're not. So to me, the NFL is just so unpredictable. So week 1 and week 2, the first month is really a great spot to take underdogs. So I spoke for too long there. You guys chime in.
You're good,
John. You can offer your thoughts,
before
Alex.
John goes, I just want to put a couple of things in the chat. Shouts to New Jersey Drive in the chat. Says, let's fucking go. I'm hyped. Socks, member for 5 months, says, smash the like and subscribe button. Football is back, baby. NFC East is very interesting this year. Pepsi is trash. Shot at me on that one. But have a great day, boys. Off to work. And then Tim, haven't seen you in here before, but is asking for some fantasy advice, which we will definitely get into along with Steven's question. He says DJ Moore or Damian Pierce in the half PPR or Derek Carr or Sam Howell in the 2-quarterback league.
Stick around, Tim. I will have some fantasy football questions answered. I also have some start and sit 'em or target or sell high players on. But going back to some of what Joe said, Joe, you've made me a very happy man because every week we're doing picks, right? And we all pick the Steelers as an outright underdog to win the game, right? Okay. These two gentlemen picked the Bengals. I picked the Browns. And the fact that you said it just makes my day a whole lot better. But nevertheless, you talked about one of the games you just talked about there, because I'm going to announce some of the bets that I really liked. I got one for everything: a spread, a money line, a total, a parlay, and a player prop. Let's have fun, guys. So the spread that I really liked, I liked the Colts spread. It was up to at 5 at one point. Then it drops to 4.5. And like you said, you don't know how many of these teams, how good every team is week 1. It's only on paper, right? But, I really question, how much better is the Jags roster as opposed to the Colts? Now, obviously, they have the clear quarterback advantage. I really like Trevor Lawrence. I'm very high on him. I think he's going to ascend into an elite quarterback, if people don't think he is already. But I looked at it and I'm like, all right, there's some questions on defense of the Jaguars. There's a little bit of questions on offensive line. And the Colts very banged up last year, all right? And I understand they have a rookie quarterback, but did you know that the home divisional dogs, Joe, sometimes they'll hit more than not? I think it was at a 78% against the spread they were, which was mind-boggling to me. So
can I add something, John, to that?
Go ahead.
So this kind of goes into, I'm not going to, again, reference the Giants, but I think Armin said it. Shouts to Armin. It's his birthday, by the way. Armin said it on our last show, whatever live stream we did. Home underdogs since 2014 are 29-9-1 at home. Something along those lines.
Yeah,
so.
which is nuts. So, and I saw that line. I'm like, you know what? This might be a closer game than most people think. You know, sometimes a team might play down to competition. So I need to see the Jaguars prove it. That's why I don't know. I don't think the Jaguars are going to outright lose the game, but I don't know if it's going to be more than 4.5 or 5. So that's one bet I really liked. Another one I liked on the money line straightly, Tennessee over the Saints today, because
I agree.
You know, the Saints are just like, you know, I like Derek Carr quarterback. I think he's a much bigger upgrade for them there. But I asked myself and I said, okay, how much do I really believe in Dennis Allen? I don't really know if he's proven anything a lot. You know, Mike Vrabel, we've seen him years. He gets the best out of mediocre rosters or just like a not complete roster, in my opinion. I know they lack some weapons on offense. They lack a little bit of the offensive line. But Mike Vrabel gets the best out of his players. I think he's going to simply outcoach Dennis Allen today, and it's going to shock. And you can find the Titans as an underdog. I don't know what they're valued at right now. I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm going
Titans are plus 2.5 right now.
2.5. What about the money line? What are they?
Titans on the money line, plus 125.
Yeah, at that odds, I like the chances there. So you can get some plus money there. Then the total for the total game, so the over/under games for people that don't know. I'm going with the Arizona Cardinals and the Washington Commanders, and that's because I'm picking their under today. And the reason I'm doing that is because you could find them at like a 38 for the total of this game, but like I just don't know. Like Arizona's starting Joshua Dobbs. Like, do I really think he's gonna like throw for a lot of yards or do some damage against Washington, who's got some pretty good defensive players? And I think Washington will score a little, but I don't think they're gonna put up. I doubt they put up more than 25. Sam Howell might do okay just because the Cardinals, they're not a very good team. They're going to be a bad team. That I can guarantee. But do I think both teams are going to, outright score 20, 25? I doubt it. I doubt that's going to happen. I see it in a low scoring affair in that one, in my opinion. I have a player prop just for fun. I don't really do player props and parlays like that, but the player prop, Calvin Ridley, I'm going to take his over in receiving yards. It was at like 57.5, which I think that's like ridiculously low for him. I think he's an excellent receiver. The fact that Trevor Lawrence is throwing him the football now, I think he can easily get to 60 yards over 57.5 yards for that. And then the parlay that I made, if you guys want to follow it, go ahead. It's a 3-legger just for fun. Alex might like this part. I got the Giants covering the Cowboys spread. I don't know if they're going to win. I don't think they're going to win, but they played them competitive and hard last year. I think they can cover 3.5 spread. I don't know if the line has moved, but I think that's very capable for them. I'll also take the Jags money line because I do think they'll end up winning the game. I just don't think they're going to. I just don't want to take their spread. That's the only difference there. And the other parlay for the 3-leg is the Eagles-Pats under. A lot of people have been the public's been picking a lot on the Eagles. Don't know if it's the right move. I don't know what the Patriots are going to be. So, but I do know this: they always have a good defense under Bill Belichick. They added a lot again, and they were very exceptionally well on defense last year. I mean, leading sack man Matthew Judon, a huge part of that. They added Christian Gonzalez in the draft, who I really liked in their first round pick, and the Eagles, they still have a very good defense, even though, and they added to it with Jalen Carter on the defensive line and Kobe Dean, and just some of the other players that they took in the draft. But those are some of the best bets. Joe, if you have any others or any advice for what I just gave out.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about Calvin Ridley too, because our Newsday columnist Tom Rock had that as one of his 10 things he wants to see. Ridley, because of what happened with him in the past, going over all his going over all his numbers for the season because of his betting history. But I mean, I don't want to add much to that. But if you want, I can talk about the local teams. Because,
yeah, of course,
sure.
I mean, the Giants. You guys, I guess I don't know how you guys are twins, and one's a Giants fan, one's a Jets fan, but I don't know if we have enough time for that. But yeah, I like the Giants a lot this year. Everyone's this whole narrative about how the Giants were lucky last year, and they have a harder schedule. I don't buy it at all. To me, Brian Dable is a top 5 coach, and he got 2 of the best assistants. I got the Giants going 12-5 and actually winning the division. I think the Eagles come back to earth a little bit. I mean, I actually have them going 12-5 as well. But no one's talking about the Eagles. They lost both of their coordinators. I mean, that's a big deal, and no one's talking about it. And if you look at their schedule last year, I actually picked the Eagles before the year started to go to the Super Bowl. They had some lucky, not lucky, but they had some. They didn't have a tough schedule. The Eagles, they beat up on a lot of bad teams. They dominated the Giants, and to me, it's the Giants. There's no such thing as a must-win in Week 1. That's crazy. But if there's such a thing as a close to must-win, it's for the Giants. I mean, they can't. If they lose on a last-second field goal, so be it. But the only thing they didn't do last year was win in the division. They went 1-4-1 plus the playoff loss. So I mean, if they, other than the Bears, I mean, I feel like there's other than the Bears, maybe the Jets, the team that needs to make a statement in Week 1 the most, the Giants. They need to beat the Cowboys. They've lost 11 of 12 against the Cowboys. But to me, I trust in Dable. I'm not a big believer in Mike McCarthy. I think it might take time for him calling the plays there, switching it up. And the Giants, everyone talks about the Jets offseason for obvious reasons, but the Giants had a great offseason. Darren Waller, I mean, he might not play tonight, which isn't great, but hopefully he does. Jalen Hyatt, I think he's going to be one of the best rookies in the league. Guy's super fast, and I think that he's a game changer. And obviously they got Barkley. And I think Daniel Jones, everyone likes to diss on him. And I think he's going to have a great year. But he actually has weapons now. Last year he had a great year, and he had no receivers. They had nobody. So I think, not nobodies, but guys who aren't stars, solid guys. Slayton and Hodgins are good players, but they're not stars. Now that they have more weapons and they can utilize him running, I think the Giants are going to be really good. And they also made improvements at linebacker, and they got the 2 young corners. So I think they, Giants plus 3.5. I like them a lot. I like them to win the game. So I like the Giants. And as far as the Jets, I mean, that's the game of the week. ESPN, the NFL, they got it right with those 2 games at night. 2 great games. But I'm a big believer in the Jets. I think Aaron Rodgers has a huge chip on his shower. I think he's going to have a huge year. Garrett Wilson's my pick for Offensive Player of the Year. I think he's next to Devontae Adams. The Jets, last year they were 7-4. If they had a quarterback, they would have made the playoffs easily. Mm-hmm. And I think Rodgers he's going to live up to the hype. I got them going 13-4. The Jets all the way to the AFC title game, losing to the Chiefs. But I think they're going to beat the Bills again. The Bills, to me, it might sound silly to some. I think the Bills are a little overrated. They always lose in the playoffs. Josh Allen's great, but he makes ton of turnovers, and they're obviously a better team. They're proven. They've been a great regular season team. But last year, they lost at MetLife 20-17. Allen had 2 picks, sacked 5 times, and that was against Zach Wilson. So I think it'll be tough. Aaron Rodgers was already saying the other day, like, it's going to be a work in progress. We're going to take, it's going to take some time. I don't think the Jets are going to come out here and win, 40-7. But I think it's going to be, I have it 24-20 Jets, and I have the Giants 24-23. So I think we're going to get 2 close games. I think the local teams are going to be really, really good this year. That Week 8 matchup is going to be great. So that'll be a fun one for you guys, for the Twins.
Yep. Alex, if you want to offer your first thoughts on Joe's Giants thoughts.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that he thinks high of the Giants. I mean, I have them winning like 10 games, but no, I mean, as of right now, as what they say, I know Rappaport usually comes out with these midnight injury reports. One of them happened to be that Darren Waller is expected to play. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I know there's that media narrative and all that sort of other stuff. I mean, I'm much of a realist when it comes to the Giants. I'll point out the flaws. I'll point out the strong points, but I feel like this team can make noise this year, and there's going to be games where they should win and maybe they don't or lose by a last-second field goal. But I think I do agree with – I know that John got on me for this. Luca got on me for this. I'm going to actually go ahead and agree with Joe. I do think this is much of a must-win for the Giants. Now, they will tell me, this is the Dable era. It's different. The Giants' seasons have been derailed after 0-1. And yes, you could sit here and say we do play Arizona next week, which should be the easiest matchup next week in the NFL. But the thing is, after that, you face San Francisco. The Giants have a tough schedule, and I'm not one to sit here and complain about it. But the Giants have a tough schedule the first 7 to 10 weeks of the season, which is really going to shape out. They got 3 straight road games in the middle before they come back home. I think it's either before or after they come back home. They got what was it? The Raiders, they got the Cowboys, and they got Washington. But overall, their first 10 of 10 games is going to be on the road. So it's not easy. And the Giants need to win as many games as possible. And to be completely fair, in that road trip, as I mentioned, they face Dallas. I don't think we'll beat Dallas on the road given that road trip. So I think tonight, Daniel Jones has to come out balling. I think they'll definitely have a solid running game. But they have to come out with this primetime narrative, cut the crap. Like last year they did it against Washington. That's fine. But I think the Giants also need to start winning by more than one score this year. Because last year they won almost every game except for the Colts game by one score. They need to cut that to at least, a touchdown and a field goal or something like that. But it's going to be very interesting. I'm really excited for this year. Luca, do you have any insight on anything else?
Can I just get in there 1 minute? I forgot to mention on John's picks. I agree with the Titans pick. That was one of my other top picks. Mike Vrabel, he's 23-14, I think, against the spread as an underdog. Yeah. And I agree. That's a huge coaching mismatch. So Titans, great pick on the money line, plus 3 points.
Yeah, very much so. As into my Jets, I'm happy that Joe picked the Jets to win the division. Obviously, a good hype for both me and Alex to obviously pick the Giants and Jets to win the division. But obviously, tomorrow's a critical game for the Jets. Obviously, Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers debut and all. I don't believe the season's over if we lose, but I think it's like a really, it would be a really good tone setter for the season if we come out 1-0, especially against the Bills. Obviously, you're trying to chase them for the division and all, top team in the AFC. It's just going to be such an important game. I mean, there's obviously more analysis to be done, but critical for Aaron Rodgers, critical for the defense. And Allen has, I'm not going to say he's like struggled all the way against the Jets, but the Jets have a ferocious front. And one thing that's not been mentioned by the analysts is like the Bills have their own questions in the offensive line. They have a rookie, Simons Torres starting. They have Spencer Brown, who hasn't played well in past years at right tackle. Deion Dawkins had 13 penalties last year. Connor McGovern was signed. The Dallas Cowboys, Connor McGovern was signed. Obviously, he's more of a better pass protector than run blocker. Like, I think the Jets are going to try to make Josh Allen throw the ball because they know they don't have a good run game, or at least they will try to make them run the ball because they don't. The problem is that the Bills don't have the greatest run game. They never have under Allen. Allen is their run game. So that's an interesting thought. But Joe, I know you have to get out of here soon. Do you have any final thoughts?
I think we covered it all. Jets and Giants going to be great. Underdogs week 1, but I don't want to get into every game. People don't want to hear me talking about every game, but I think you just expect a wild week 1. Don't go in here thinking. I think at like 4:00, you're gonna be like, "Wow, that team won," or "That game is that close." It's gonna be it's always that way in week 1. So and I also think I'll leave you with this. The other night there was already, it took 3 hours for the NFL season already. Tons of overreaction on the Kansas City game. Oh, they don't have the champs. They weren't playing with their second and third best players, Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and Kadarius Toney dropped like 8 passes. So I mean, come on. I cannot wait to pick them next week at Jacksonville. I'm pretty sure it's Patrick Mahomes' 28th birthday next Sunday. He's only lost back-to-back games, I think, maybe 3 times or 4 times in his career. Cannot wait to pick them next week. So I think the Chiefs will do just fine.
All right. Thank you, Joe, for coming on. We really appreciate everybody. Joe from Newsday Sports. Obviously, he does the picking panel, the bets panel, and all that. Please check out his work on Newsday. Please follow him on Twitter. He's been a great guest. Thank you, Joe, for coming on.
Guys, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it.
All right, so let's get back into this. I do want a quick shout out to 2 people real quick. I think we should, honestly, my opinion, Luca, you tell me how to go. I think we should caveat into the fantasy picks because I know we've gotten a ton of questions about that. But also, I do want to throw a shout out to Disgruntled in the chat. I also want to throw a shout out to Big Pat Sports Talk. We won't be streaming the Giants game, but Big Pat will be streaming the Giants game with the Big Blue Crew. So I'm going to pull this up here because I actually did John the favor of making a graphic, but I do want to go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to, Luca, while I'm putting this graphic up and putting Big Pat's channel in the chat,
sure.
Do you want to go over the starred questions? Because hopefully, I think it's Tim and Steven are still here.
Gotcha. So, first, I think Tim had another start question. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, I'll answer that for him.
Okay. All right. So, I I've done that. All right, so we're going to start off with Tim's second question. We're going to go back. Carr or Howell? He has a 2-quarterback league.
And it's funny. Wait, I'm sorry. You mean you have 2 starters at quarterback? That's what you mean, or you have like just 2 in general? If it, you know what, I'll assume that it's more just 2 quarterbacks in general. But it's funny because it actually ties into my start and sit 'em. And usually like I outright think Derek Carr is the better quarterback. But my start guy this week at quarterback, Sam Howell, ridiculously like undervalued here against a really bad Cardinals team. He's only starting in 2.3% of leagues, and he's rostered on 11% of leagues, so he's widely available in a lot of these leagues. And this is going to be interesting because and it's not to say Howell's going to finish a better year than Carr, but you have to look. The Cardinals are a horrific roster. All right. They are absolutely atrocious out there. So I really doubt that, Howell's going to have like a 400-yard passing game. But do I think it's going to be good enough to start in fantasy? Hell yeah. I mean, you should literally target players that are going to be facing Cardinals if your team is full of injuries, or if you're just like, if your roster's in shambles for whatever reason, go find players that, have bad, like really good matchups. That's how you're going to win leagues. That's how you're going to win with your depth. For example, in my league, like the tiebreaker is like bench points. Like that could very well be a tiebreaker if you start Sam Howell. Now I do want to see how he plays, but this could be the easiest matchup he gets. So really undervalued there, Sam Howell. Should I answer the other questions, or should I get into the start and sit him?
I would say,
go ahead, Alex. You were saying?
I was saying Steven's got another. He says
right.
Also to Tim, Hurts is his other starting quarterback. He's going against New England.
That's fine.
Steven is going to reiterate his question. Honestly, like I'm a big fantasy guy, I know, but like I'm not going to tell you advice and shit like that. Kind of like John will do. I would think Deion Jackson, because
Deion Jackson's going to get 100, probably most of the carries.
Breece Hall is still coming back from the ACL injury.
I will say this though. It's not that I'm a huge fan of Deion Jackson, because not to say that the Jags have the best defense, but Deion Jackson there last year, I don't believe he had more than 12 carries in a game, so I don't know how he's going to handle that kind of workload, and also depending on where they're in the game slot, if they're going to have to run the ball more. But like you said, Breece Hall has got a shared backfield right now with Dalvin Cook, Abedakanda, Carter. So I don't know the usage and how ready he is going to be for week 1. So I'd have to lean Deion Jackson, but it's not like a strong lean. If you have to play Deion Jackson, fine. I think he'd be the better starter for week 1, especially with his matchup, because I think the Bills are better than the Jags at rushing defense.
Right, and even I think the Jets are still going to be passing the ball. It's an Aaron Rodgers offense, and Dalvin Cook. I mean, he's a bench player on my fantasy team, but John, if you want to, and if you guys got any more questions, NFL, fantasy football, betting related, put them in the chat. We've got I must say, by the way, also this is a good one. I forgot
DJ
about this
Moore
question.
or Damian Pierce. Well, I'll say this because DJ Moore is, a lot of people are sitting him, right? But I'm in the belief. I'm really in the belief that DJ Moore has a really solid year. Now, what is it going to be right away against the Packers? I'm going to say yeah. And the reason is the Packers, they're viewed as a lockdown team, but they do play a lot of zone coverage. So it's not necessarily like Jair Alexander is going to shadow him and follow him. All right. Again, Moore is in a number. He's a number 1 wideout on this team, right? And you expect Justin Fields to take that next step. I think DJ Moore, his floor is a flex play. That's what I think. I think his floor is a flex play. I think honestly, his ceiling could be a high wide receiver 2 and a wide out 1, a low wide out 1 if he really gets that good. And here's why I say start him over Dameon Pierce. Remember, Dameon Pierce was hurt. He's coming off major surgery, so you don't know how he's going to be. And this can apply to Breece Hall too. You don't know how he's going to be until he gets his legs under him for a few games and get back into game shape. So definitely. I'd hold off on the guys that are like coming off a major injury or major surgery to start out. Another guy like that who I have actually, who I was considering putting him in the sit-him was Javonte Williams. And that's because dude's coming off an ACL. You don't know how these guys are going to start week 1. Not saying they're going to have bad seasons, but the start is very tough. We had Joe. I forgot it was Joe if we mentioned, or one of you guys mentioned, with a quarterback, Brock Purdy. He's coming off friggin' an elbow problem. You don't know how he's going to be week 1. So again, not to say that any of these guys are going to have a bad season, but nevertheless, we kind of got into the start and sit him. I mentioned Sam Howell. Here's the sit him at quarterback because I think he is going to have a very bad season. Baker Mayfield. Not a huge fan on him, okay? I know the Vikings do not have the best defense, okay? And I know Baker Mayfield's not being targeted, and I know he could be a target, but he is like, he's just such a big question mark. I mean, you look at him last year, right? And yeah, he had some nice games, but his awful games were like beyond awful. I mean, just you look at some of the matchups. Look at his last 2: 8 points against Seattle, 6 points against the Chargers, right? 10 points against Green Bay. And those games were all under 150 yards throwing.
True.
He can very well have games where he craps out. So do not target Baker Mayfield. Tim, you asked, can you also speak on the thoughts on QB Stroud?
He's facing the Ravens, so that's a tough ask.
That's a very tough ask for him. I would not start him. If you have Stroud and Howell on your bench, I'd rather start Howell just because of the matchup. I think Stroud's actually going to struggle a lot early on, so I'd avoid Stroud unless he proves otherwise, Tim. Now we'll go to the running back position, start him, sit him. The guy I have starting, and I know I kind of trashed the team a little, but for fantasy purposes, I like Jamal Williams in this spot. Coming over from Detroit, he's rostered in 86% of leagues, so he's a high commodity, I'd say. But I remember Alvin Kamara suspended, so
and Kendra Miller's not playing.
And Kendra Miller's not playing. Alex makes a good point because I did note that in some of the fantasy injuries I was looking at. But Jamal Williams had the most touchdowns of any running back last year. Again, let me repeat. Most touchdowns of any running back last year. All right?
Dude, money.
Right. And in 6 games, he had more than two touchdowns, which is fantastic, by the way. So, again, not saying he's going to put up the exact same touchdown production from that, but you really need to, monitor this guy, especially if he's going to get all these touches now. The Saints are going to look to run the football, okay? And Jamal Williams is an excellent candidate for week 1. Here's a guy I'm not so high on in the running back room, and that's Travis Etienne. Now, I'm not saying the guy is not talented at all, but I think Travis Etienne, and I'm not comparing the running styles or the categories, but he's being started in 94% leagues, and he's owned in 99%. I'd stay away from Travis Etienne. And the reason is because despite having a very solid season, the Jags added a really good running back in Tank Bigsby, who I don't know how much of the time he's going to cut in, but you look at some of the complimentary backs, either rookies or just in general, you look at that Lions game, a lot of people started Jahmyr Gibbs. He didn't do so hot just because David Montgomery got some touches. So it could cut into it, which very scares me. It's the same thing with a Najee Harris with Jaylen Warren cutting into his touches. When you're getting your touches taken away, you're getting less time on the field. Less time on the field means less time to produce for points. So I really don't like Travis Etienne in this spot. I also think the Colts are getting some. Remind me, is Darius Leonard playing today?
Shaq
Leonard, sorry.
Let me take a look at that for you, John.
But
he's cleared concussion protocol. He'll play.
Sorry. We got some rain that I got to keep out of my windows. Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, it's pouring over here.
Do we ought to have a rain sound effect? I'm sorry.
We don't have a rain sound effect. I do want to say, though, for our first morning show, we've gotten a ton of attention. So
it's
you guys
fantasy,
are great.
Fantasy football.
Fantasy attention, betting attention. So you guys in the comments are great. Again, we're going to be doing this every single Sunday morning. We might adjust the time a little bit, but every single Sunday morning, it's going to be this. Obviously, we'll do some betting and all that sort of stuff. But I just wanted to commend y'all for coming in and supporting us, and even the newcomers. I don't know whose team you root for, but the fantasy advice we're always here to give and stuff like that. John, you could take your floor back.
Right. Sorry about that, as I had to, stop the rain offense from coming in my window defense. But anyway, we were on Travis Etienne. We're going to the wideouts now. I talked about DJ Moore and why to start him, so you should do that. Here's the guy I'm not so high on. Oh, sorry. I did, before we get into the wideouts, I did want to say Shaq Leonard is starting. He is on the depth chart. They also got some really talented guys in this front seven. DeForest Buckner is still very talented. Kawhi Pay is still very talented. Grover Stewart, another guy with some talent. So it's not going to be the easiest to run on this team. Nevertheless, we'll go into the wideouts. I talked about DJ Moore, and I really do like him, especially today. Here's a guy I'm considering sitting: Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, that's not to say
he's hurt, right?
He's been upgraded to.
He's been practicing, but he's still. I think he's coming off.
Let me double. I could have swore they took his injury thing off fantasy. Yeah, it says here that he's healthy in fantasy.
I would say he's coming off some sort of shoulder surgery, something like that.
Right. But I'd be wary over Jackson Smith and Jigba, just because he broke a bone in his wrist.
His wrist.
In I think it was a preseason game, or if I'm not mistaken, because I do remember him being taken out. I just don't remember when specifically. And he did practice as a full participant. But again, he's sharing an offense with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Those guys got a lot of target shares last year for Geno Smith. And Geno Smith's the guy who is going to try and, he's going to stick to what he's comfortable with. He wants to stay and prove why he was Seattle's breakout player last year. He was one of the best breakout players in all of football last year. He's going to give DK and Tyler his targets. Don't think he's comfortable yet with Jackson Smith because of the time. Jackson Smith and Jigba because of the time miss. So again, that's some of the wideouts to sit, or the main wideout to sit. Do not start the rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Let me ask this. I'm sorry to interrupt on John. Did you go over the starts for wide receiver? Because
I said it when I answered the DJ Moore question.
I also wanted to add in some, because I'm trying to do my fantasy research on my own as well. NFL.com suggests Chris Olave to start against the Titans. Now, the Titans have, I'd say, a decent secondary, so maybe that's an interesting pick. They also suggest to start Jahan Dotson. I would.
Jahan, let me tell you something. I want to shout out Giants and Red Sox fan. That's a Sox Arizona combo, but shouts to you, man. Game day, absolutely. If you're new here, hit the like button, subscribe. I will say this, respectfully though, because I've watched. I'm obviously in the division. I know McLaurin had turf toe and he was kind of faltering, but now he's going to play. Do not sleep on Jahan Dotson this year. I've picked him up in several fantasy leagues. I don't know what that, and it's not even just because of the situation with Terry McLaurin. Do not sleep on Jahan Dotson. Do not. I know, like in my leagues, because I've picked high, he's my backup wide receiver. But in other leagues, he's my starter because I picked, obviously further in the order. But do not sleep on Jahan Dotson. That's one of my only fantasy advice. And I will say this: it is a damn shame that George Pickens was ranked as low as he was in some of these fantasy rankings. Like, you look, I don't know how many of y'all drafted leagues and whatnot, but the fact that George Pickens was as low as he was, and with the amount of ceiling he can have, I don't know.
No, I agree completely, 100%. And I'm actually starting. Sorry, Luca, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I gotta ask you about this too, because NFL.com suggests this. There's like three stardoms that I'm questioning for obvious reasons.
Okay.
You have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They're obviously the talented receivers. Let's mention that.
Mm-hmm.
They say start them against the Vikings. Now the Vikings, like, I get them because they try to add pieces and whatever. But the thing is, Baker Mayfield's their starting quarterback. So how is he going to look in that first game? Do you really risk starting him? And my other stardom that I saw on NFL.com was start Drake London versus the Panthers. How is Desmond Ritter going to do in his first game? So it's like, you can't really. It's interesting because, again, those quarterbacks have question marks. Is it worth starting?
Again?
Desmond.
What's that?
Drake London.
What was the Falcons one related again?
Drake London. London's going to be very good, but again, it's the quarterback that I'm
Like
worried
he had a quiet. I'm pretty sure he had over 1,000 last year, and that was very quiet considering the way Atlanta was.
Mhm.
But like I would expect that mostly run game, play action,
Yeah,
screen
they got
stuff like that.
Bijan, so I don't think they're going to rely on the pass as much as I think.
And who they play the Panthers today. Okay, we'll see. We'll
John,
see.
continue.
Did you want me to answer any of those questions, or you want to go back?
Yeah,
to
you could give your take on them.
I think the biggest thing you talked about is, some of those other receivers are not the best quarterback play. I'll say this about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Yeah, they could be missed, but they've also proven a lot with some bad quarterbacks. Remember, before
That's
Brady,
true.
they've had guys like Jameis Winston under center, who was a pick machine. So they can prove to be very solid starts in a very bad quarterback play offense. So I'd give them some credit, and I give them the respect they deserve just because they've proven that they can do it. So I would say it's a comfortable you could start them. Minnesota, not the best defense, but that doesn't mean I'm starting Baker Mayfield. No.
Right, of course. 100%.
Don't target him. Don't target him for anything. You talk about Drake London. And it was funny you mentioned this because, I was looking at some underrated guys. Thought about drafting him. Wasn't sure about Desmond Ridder, but he is going to get plenty of volume. I don't think you guys even know this, but he was third in target shares in 29% and second in the target shares for the red zone, 33% among receivers last year. So he is going to get a lot of volume against the Panthers defense that was sixth most in fantasy in allowing points. But Desmond Ridder started the last 3 games for the Panthers, right? Here's how Drake London did with Desmond Ridder. 14 points, 24 points, 12 points last 3 games. So it's not like he can't it's not like he hasn't proven that he can't play with a bad quarterback. So I do give him some credit. And if you do want to start Drake London maybe as a flex option, I would consider that too, depending on who else you have. Nevertheless,
Just like
Go ahead.
I hate to interrupt you again. Jacob says Brian Burns is active for Carolina. Interesting, even though they didn't negotiate an extension. I also found this interesting. I was surfing the Twitter web, and our buddy Joe, who was just on with us, he actually picked the Dolphins and Chargers to tie.
Wow,
which is interesting. But I also have some, not many fantasy questions for you, John, because this is actually regarding my own teams. Not too many integral questions. That's what I'm going to ask. Quarterback, Justin Herbert versus the Dolphins or Daniel Jones versus the Cowboys?
That's funny because that's my team. I'm starting Justin Herbert this week. And I really debated it. I really sat there and debated it. But I look at Miami's secondary. They are just such an overrated team, in my opinion.
They have Howard, but they don't have Jalen Ramsey, which is interesting.
Right. But
they have Eli Apple.
Yeah, I literally forgot Eli Apple played. But last year, Herbert was one of the top quarterbacks, despite his injuries. But Miami is such a shaky defense, and it's almost a must start for Justin Herbert. I really did debate it, but it's it's so laughable. I mean, Herbert's a guy that could easily throw for 4,500, 4,500 yards this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't shock me at all. So, again, Justin Herbert, in my opinion, is just going to, I'm not saying Daniel Jones won't do good, but I rather just play Justin Herbert just because of the matchup.
Next question, Kirk Cousins or Geno Smith?
Ooh, this is a good one. In terms of that, I'd
no more Jalen Ramsey for the Rams.
I lean Kirk Cousins just because I think that the Bucs are not going to be a very good team. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, the Bucs, in my opinion. And
he is. What's up, man?
What's up, man?
They're going to have Eli Apple's mom calling the plays.
Yeah, there you go. But remember, Kirk Cousins, he had a sluggish start. He was at times up and down, and I had him in fantasy last year. But he had another strong year for the Vikings last year. Last season, 4,500 yards, 29 touchdowns for him, 14 picks, near 66 completion percentage. Mm-hmm. And remember, he's still got, a very good arm out there. But I just want to mention, he had a really hot end to the season last year. Just look at some of his last 5 games: 425 yards, 460, 299. Then he, against Green Bay and Chicago, didn't do so hot. In that Green Bay game and the Chicago game, it was kind of like whatever at that point. But he was riding a very good streak. Remember that comeback he had against Indianapolis, which was mind-boggling, really good. He can put up points, and he's very good for fantasy despite his perceived image for that. So that I'm going with Kirk Cousins.
And last, I think this will be my last finished question: Geno Smith or Trevor Lawrence? I think I know what your answer is, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
It's Trevor Lawrence. Some guys, I might not even like the team, but I just like the player. I'm sorry. Gus Bradley, I think, is calling plays for the Colts now, which is kind of funny because he used to be in Jacksonville. But I think you're starting Trevor Lawrence every week.
Okay.
The fact that they just gave this dude Calvin Ridley too, that's like so untalked about. It's like, oh yeah, we're just gonna trade for Calvin Ridley, and like people are gonna be like,
it's because it took a year off, obviously, with this betting suspension and all. But I think he's still going to be a big weapon. Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram is a formidable passing attack, in my opinion.
I hope everyone's taking this betting and fantasy advice. I mean, obviously Calvin Ridley can't, but I'd say that Trevor Lawrence is this guy you start every week. Every week. I mean, this dude is going to be elite this year. I'm so high on it. I'm high on him. Maybe I have a fanboy for him, but I am a Trevor Lawrence guy.
I think he's going to take a big
they're
step.
both blonde. That's why.
Oh,
I think that's what it is. We have a couple of things to get to in chat, just real quick.
What happened to Ramsey?
Ramsey got hurt.
He got hurt.
Got hurt. Training camp period. He's out till like December.
Let's go.
And even before then, he was traded to the Rams. Classy Nasty says, "Let's go. This is what we play for. Somebody hit somebody." Yes, absolutely. And then Jacob says, "How long until Brian beats the shit out of John for the Tampa comment?" I mean, he agrees. Like when we went to training camp,
it's not a shocker. I mean, I don't think many people think highly of Tampa.
Right.
I mean, especially when you're coached by Todd Bowles, Mr. Punt on 4th down when you're down 10.
We didn't execute, guys.
Yeah, we didn't execute.
We didn't execute.
Duh. I like their offensive. Listen, I like their offensive coordinator. I don't like the coach.
Come on, guys. Let's all try and communicate with it.
Duh. we gotta clip that next time we're on.
I'll go back to the start him, sit him because we're almost done here.
Yeah.
Start him. Logan Thomas. Same kind of thing as Sam Howell. Really undervalued tight end in week 1. And I get it. Logan, there's other weapons like Alex mentioned, Jahan Dotson, who I think is going to be sneaky good this year. Obviously, scary. We call him Scary Terry because Terry McLaurin's just that scary. But Logan Thomas, sneakily only owned rostered in 2.8% of leagues. And it's funny. A lot of people are saying, I know he had a calf injury. A lot of people are saying, you shouldn't start him just because, you don't know how this Commanders offense can be. They're facing the Cardinals. Anyone can feast on that day. There could be an unexpected guy to feast. I think Logan Thomas could be that guy. And remember, Howell's a rookie quarterback. He was a first-round talent that dropped into the 5th round. So Logan Thomas could very well be his safety blanket, and that can only help you for your fantasy starts. Now here's my most controversial one of the day, and that's Mark Andrews. To sit him at tight end, although did he actually get listed as
he's likely not playing.
Wow. Okay, so that only helped my point because he has a quad injury right now. And if he's healthy, regardless, do not start him. Do not start him. Sometimes injuries to the lower half or a guy's quad or a guy's calf, especially bigger receivers and tight ends, very hard to deal with for them. Do not start him at all today. Then we have, remember, kickers and defense. I know they're boring, but they can help win leagues. They can. You lose by a point, kicker missed a field goal. That's on you for not listening. But we'll go to the kickers list right now. Guy I want to play today, that's going to be Nick Folk, Jets legend. I think that he can easily get some field goals today against the Eagles, who team who I think is again a little overvalued on general.
John, Nick Folk is a Titan.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of something else. I apologize. I was looking at the
John?
Pats defense.
You know what, John?
That's an error on me. I'm sorry. Sorry. You're correct. It's an early morning. I don't think the Saints are going to be that good. And I think Nick Folk is going to kick some extra points. A kicker I'm staying away from. Same kind of theme. I don't think Tampa scores that much. I think Minnesota is going to dominate them in this game. Chase McLaughlin, don't even consider picking him up. Here's a defense I really like. The Cleveland Browns. I know it's crazy. Joe Burrow is nasty. Coming off a calf injury, guys. Didn't really play a full preseason, have a full training camp. At times, he was questionable going into this game. Browns are actually rostered. They're 61% rostered, 49% start. But number one, they get after the quarterback very well. And the Bengals have a very shaky O-line. Number two, they can create turnovers. They have guys and playmakers in the secondary that can possibly beat up on Joe Burrow. Again, like we said earlier, Joe Burrow is 1-4 against the Browns for a reason. They have his number. That's why I also took him in the picks and also advise you to play the Browns defense today. Here's my sit-em defense. This is why I wanted to talk about the Pats. Patriots, sit-em. I think the Eagles, I don't know if they're going to win this game. But what I do know is Jalen Hurts is very hard to stop on the run. And New England, yeah, they had some success last year, but they still have the majority of the O-line intact, if not all. But not only that, there's just so much talent for the Eagles where it's like, all right, I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I think I think they'll be able to put up some fantasy points. And that is week 1, start 'em, sit 'em. I'll get to some comments that I have. Disgruntled says, Chandler Jones tweeting that he thinks he could have hit Russell Wilson twice today. Uh-oh. So that's going to be very interesting.
He's been on an interesting streak lately. I mean, I hope all is well with him on a more serious note, but they sent a crisis counselor to his house.
Oh, God. Okay. Nevertheless, Barbara says, Chase called. Yeah, I saw that comment.
It's because their middle of the field logo is trash. I have to agree with him.
It's September 10, 10:53 a.m. Luca has called the logo trash. Disgruntled also says, on the bright side, if Tyree is healthy and ready to go, I don't mind getting him more reps early. Yeah, that makes sense.
Tyree Wilson.
Yes. On September 10th, 2023, Angry John D'Amico has admitted that he's a Trevor Lawrence stan. Yes, exactly. Barbara says, I'm starting Cook and Wilson from the Jets. God help me. Love Garrett Wilson. Think he's going to be a start every week. Watch out on Dalvin Cook, though. Don't know how much of the touches he's going to get week 1.
You could get away. I'll say this: you can get away with him starting now, but not like midseason, because that's I think when Breece Hall.
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it yet.
I'd assume 50-50 or like something like that.
So that's why I'm weary to not start either of them really, unless you have to maybe use as a flex play. But I'm kind of hoping to avoid Jets running backs for the time being.
Yeah. Right. So that's your fantasy start and sits. If you guys have any more questions, just put it in the chat.
Well, I'll be happy to answer them.
Yes. So now we're gonna break back into our game previews, which we took a little detour from, but that's of course always fine and well. Next up, got that. Yes, he did clip up my Todd Bowles impression, and you guys are Jets experts.
We didn't execute.
Yeah, we didn't execute. But I'm gonna hand it over to Luca. And you know what's weird is you said it to me last night, and then obviously he reiterated this morning. Our 3 game previews were the 3 best bets for Mr. Joe.
Ooh,
so it just knows we have a good taste in terms of this stuff. But let's go to the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the San Francisco 49ers.
Alex, I would like if you put up the banner saying what game we're previewing, just a little help the audience. But I really like this game. Niners, Steelers, two really good defenses, top of the line, in my opinion. Fox game in my area. I'm obviously intrigued because my best friend's a Steelers fan and all that. Whatever. The Niners open up as 2.5 favorites. I'm actually, in my opinion, if I were to offer betting advice, I'm taking the Steelers. And a little prediction here, I'm taking the Steelers to win as we have the picks and all. But regardless, breaking into each of the teams, you got the Niners and the Steelers. I'm going to start off with the Niners, who they added, who they subtracted, what's important, what's not important. So, going to our key additions, Javon Hargrave is a defensive line monster. Last season, I'm going to do the stat check right now. He was a monster for the Eagles. I believe he was also a Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler in 2021, but 2022, 11 sacks, 60 tackles, 16 quarterback hits, 10 tackles for loss, 17 games. He was a part of that vaunted Eagles defensive front. So I think they're going to really reliable rusher up front, in my opinion. So I think that is a good addition. Just checking my connection here real quick. All right, so the next addition is Isaiah Oliver. I don't remember who their nickelback was, the Niners, but they obviously signed Isaiah Oliver, a solid defensive back in the secondary, supposed to take over. Mosley was an outside corner, right?
Manuel Mosley, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Mosley was an outside corner. Just want to check that out. They also added to Cleveland Farrell. He's more of, I guess they say he's a starter on the depth chart, but he's really underwhelmed in his career, obviously with the Raiders. But the 49ers obviously kind of hope to turn him around. I think they've got the coaching over there. And another key addition, this is more on the special teams note, they've drafted a kicker, Jake Moody, in the 4th round. Now, if you've been paying attention across the NFL, this was even when, at the end of the preseason, kickers were being traded left and right and released. So it's not a popular thing to do when you come to drafting a kicker. It's more like sign a veteran free agent on the market and see what you can do. So that's an interesting one. Jake Moody, obviously last year, I'm just going to do my research now, double check. Jake Moody played for the College of Michigan, actually. He played at Michigan, obviously well known there. To add into some of the subtractions, some are pretty key in my opinion. Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously injury prone, but a very solid hold it down quarterback. I don't see much of a difference in my opinion in terms of quarterback production. I think Purdy's ceiling is very limited. I think he's just a game manager at best in the way the Shanahan system utilizes him. So that's how I see it. Again, does he become better than Garoppolo? Is he better? Is he the same level as Garoppolo? I don't know. We have yet to see his full potential because he only played a sample size of games last year. I'm truthfully not a big fan of Brock Purdy because he's just a game manager, again, in the Shanahan system. But anyways, they also traded away Trey Lance. They've essentially given up on him. We already detailed that a few weeks ago when it came to, deciding whose fault it was. It was like the Niners kind of basically gave up on him and didn't do him any justice. The Niners also lost Jimmy Ward to the Texans. Obviously, a reliable safety back there who was good in pass coverage. Samson Ebukam, a very good rotational pass rusher, was lost as well. Emmanuel Mosley, who I just mentioned, outside corner, he went to the Lions. He's going to be a part of their better defense, obviously showing on Thursday night. Mike McGlinchey, their right tackle, got a fucking payday from Denver. The Niners starting right tackle at the moment, I'm going to pull up the depth chart. Obviously, I have it right here.
Colton McKivitz.
Colton McKivitz. Now, I don't know how many games last year he played. I'm going to double check, but I think he's a question mark in my opinion. McGlinchey was more solid. All right. McGlinchey was more solid. He was obviously more of a known commodity because the Niners drafted him, I think, in the first round a couple of years ago. But losing him is big. I think he was better run blocker, but McKivitz is a question mark as is. Azeez Al-Shaair got a payday by the Titans, not too much, but the Niners lose another valuable linebacker. They love drafting linebackers.
So McKivitz played 13 games. He started 1, played 68 offensive snaps.
Is there any percentile? None. That's what low. The percentage of snaps is probably low, right?
Have it 8% of the offensive snaps in 13 games.
Yeah, so they're throwing him into the fire essentially, and it's not going to. It's going to be like, okay, you're facing a soft pass rush. That's not the case. You're facing one of the best pass rushers in the league: Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, T.J. Watt, Cameron Hayward, all vaunted on that
Marcus
front.
Golden,
Golden, also another very good edge depth pass rusher. Another key subtraction, Hassan Ridgeway. He's obviously left the building as well. Daniel Brunskill is also gone. He was the right tackle. Was he? No, I don't think he was even the right tackle. He was just a very good depth offensive line piece. Yeah. Okay, so I am staying corrected on that. But for the Niners, I'm going to go for what I expect for this game. Niners, I think they're going to try to ground and pound it. But the Steelers, I think, have a very vaunted defensive front, as I've mentioned how many times already. They got Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, who's a very reliable run stopper. Cameron Hayward, all the veterans up front.
Joey Porter Jr.
Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just talking more terms of run support. It's going to be very hard to run on this front. And I think there is questions with this 49ers offensive line. And Trent Williams, best left tackle in the league, arguably. Aaron Banks, solid left guard. Jake Brendel, he's a middle-of-the-road center. Spencer Burford, he's, I guess, okay. Colton McKivitz, question mark. So losing McGlinchey, I think, leaves a huge question mark on the offensive line. Do they run 12 personnel, 22 personnel, where they're starting to protect the right tackle? Because TJ Watt's going to be right on his fucking ass. You know that. He's going to be on his end. So it's the big question of how he's going to play. And Brock Purdy, obviously, that will affect him as well. So I expect the Niners to run the ball a lot. It's going to be ground and pounds, maybe short passing game. Obviously got weapons like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and all that. George Kittle as well. But I think the Steelers' secondary is also formidable. So I think that I'll say this. I think the run game and how the Niners are going to run it, they could probably get into a lot of toss plays with the offensive lineman trying to get the second level. The one question mark, in my opinion, that the Steelers have on defense is the linebacking core. Devin Bush was let go this offseason. You have Landon Roberts. You have Cole Holcomb. And the one question mark I don't have is Quan Alexander, who is obviously a former Jet. And he's a very reliable linebacking piece. He can somewhat cover the tight end, and he's a run stopper as well. But the two outside of Quan Alexander I have more questions about, because this is a 3-4 system where obviously you play the 4 linebackers. Sometimes you could do doesn't have to be exactly 4 linebackers. One could be a safety hybrid. But regardless, I'm expecting the Niners to test that linebacking core not only with the run game, but I also think they're going to test the linebackers in terms of the passing game. George Kittle, I think, is going to be a huge factor in this game, despite me thinking they're going to run the football. But Jacob has a question relating to the Niners. Is Bosa on a pitch count? I don't know. I'll get to that in a second in terms of what I think of Bosa. In my short thoughts already, I don't think he's going to be 100% all in. Not in terms of effort, but in terms of strength, because he's barely conditioned. He was sitting out training camp for the most of the time. So I think that's going to be playing a very intricate part.
I just want to go into this real quick. I just want to go into this. Yes, we did do a start 'em sit 'em. That's Mr. Angry John segment, and we talked about the G-Men a little bit. So if you got fantasy questions, Socks. If you got
throw them in.
G-Men questions, throw them our way, Socks. But Luca, continue.
To continue, I've detailed the Niners' offense. Defensively, I also think they're going to face a little bit of the ground and pound. I like their linebackers. I like the defensive line, obviously. But I think Pickett might be a little enticed to test the secondary. I almost said taste the secondary. I meant to say test the secondary. Testing the young secondary. You obviously got Charvarius Ward back there. Some safeties. He re-signed to Sean Gibson, I believe, as my page is being slow. Maybe I have so many tabs open. Sean Gibson, Diamador Lenoir. I've actually never heard of him, but he actually played a lot of games last year.
He was solid, if I'm not mistaken. He was definitely. I remember making him a few nice plays. I know he had maybe an interception or two. I'll take a look for you.
Okay, so and they also have Talanoa Hufanga. I think he was a draft pick last year or the year before in the 5th round. He's a part of the core. I also like the Did we do no? We didn't do Jair Brown. It was Sidney Brown who we did the profile on. But Jair Brown coming over from Penn State, he's going to be in the secondary as well. He's listed as a second string safety. So I think Pickett's going to test the secondary. But now I'm fully moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers going to Super Bowl. You got to know a yearning tree reference right there.
Can I just get to this question here? It's a fancy question.
Go ahead.
Tony Pollard or Jamal Williams in flex?
I said it earlier. My stardom guy, Jamal Williams. No Kamara, no Kendre Miller. Scott Jamal Williams led the league in touchdowns last year. Start Jamal Williams.
I also
Right
would
now.
say a quick note on that. Tony Pollard's facing a better front in the Giants, in my opinion.
Yep.
I mean, they Leonard Williams, Nunez Roaches, and also
Their starting
Asia.
left guard is out. So
Their starting left guard Tyler Smith's out, so it's not going to help if they want to run in between the tackles.
Right.
But regardless, on the Stellars, the Pittsburgh Stellars, I've mentioned the linebackers. They've added Quan Alexander, Cole Holcomb, and Landon Roberts. They've basically retooled that room. This one I like, and they added Isaac Seumalo from the Eagles. They stole one right from their in-state rivals. Seumalo, I think he's probably the best piece on the offensive line. If not, it's James Daniels. He adds stability and just overall consistency at the left guard position. They obviously had Kevin Dotson in years past, but this is a proven commodity. Steelers looking to protect Kenny Pickett at all costs. Nate Erbig, they signed from the Jets, but he's more a depth piece, and it's a very good depth piece in my opinion. Here's an underrated one, and people have forgotten about him for obvious reasons. Allen Robinson. He is their big go-up-and-get-it guy. Deontay Johnson, speed. George Pickens, speed and route running. Their big go-up-and-get-it guy is going to be Allen Robinson, and I think he's criminally being underrated. Now, it was a good signing for the Rams last year, obviously, or trade or whatever, but it was the big controversy that Matthew Stafford did not like targeting him or whatever. He was more of a Cooper Kupp guy. But Robinson, I think when he gets his fair share, is going to produce. I'm not going to say he's going for 1,000 yards, but I think, 700 to 800 yards behind George Pickens. So I'll let you answer this fantasy question.
Now, Sam Howell was my must-start guy. But if you have Tua, I'm not going to say don't start him just because he's proven that he can put up a lot of fantasy points and throw for a lot of yards, touchdowns, all that. My main gripe against Tua is health. So I also look to invest in a backup quarterback that's more stable because I don't know how Howell's going to play, but I know he's going to feast on the Cardinals week 1. And to answer your question, Arizona's awful. And they might get a big enough lead. That could be true, but again, especially if that is the case, just remember they have plenty of time to throw for a lot of touchdowns in that early part. So the running game and passing game can both be very widely affected positively for the Commanders here. I picked a lot of them to start just because, again, can't stress it enough. Arizona is awful. Capital A.
Basura, doo-doo.
Basura.
Any of those adjectives.
I must say this, Luca, and I don't know if you've gotten into this. God damn it, my camera. And by the way, folks, I'd just like to add this in because Jacob brought it up earlier. When Luca was pulling all his tricks the other night.
Thursday night,
excuse me, yeah. When he was pulling his tricks Thursday night, what happened is he changed the profile picture for the administrator, and it happened to be Aaron Rodgers. So
I thought I was going to change only my profile picture.
Well, you were wrong. But one little underrated thing I have here for the Steelers is Broderick Jones is not listed as a starting left tackle. It's Dan
Moore. It is Dan Moore. And we'll obviously get to the offensive line in a bit. But yes, thank you, Alex, for the note. They also added an edge player, Marcus Golden. He's been solid through the past couple of years. Mainly, again, he's probably rotational because this is a 3-4 system. Desmond King, I think they picked him off of the waiver wire, who I actually wanted. Special teams depth, there's nothing wrong with that. Patrick Peterson, a perfect mentor, in my opinion, Joey Porter Jr. He'll obviously be starting. Porter Jr. is actually not listed as a starter at the moment, but he just adds, he's not going to be Patrick Peterson in 2015, but he's still one of the, I'd say, a very good, reliable veteran corner. I almost said nose back. Nickelback Chandon Sullivan from the Vikings. He's going to be taking the spot, I believe, of Cameron Sutton, who is down with the Lions. So I think it's a bit of a downgrade, but I'm sure he'll be coached up real well. I think Sullivan's on a rather minor contract, if I'm not mistaken. They also added, who I brought up earlier, through the draft, the defensive tackle Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, a very, very reliable run stopper in that front. So, again, another fantasy question.
As we'll hold off on Luca's nosebacks and tasting
of the secondary.
Sox, you asked a very good question. Yes, and in my unbiased opinion, Khalil Herbert's the guy to start. I don't know what the Jets situation is going to be in the running back room week 1. And yes, noseback might be weak this year. You're right. But Khalil Herbert, Packers, one of the worst run defenses last year. That's how they're going to attack the Packers today. And they're going to they have to establish the run early. And I think they can be, Herbert's can have some success along with Justin Fields. So I'm going with Herbert.
Well, leagues I'm an auto drafted, so I got to figure this. Hey, listen, any questions you throw our way?
Well, I'll help you out, Disgruntled. If you stick with Professor Angry John's notes, you win.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Just take.
Is that what a nose back looks like, Luca?
Yes, this is what a nose back looks like because it is a snapback. It's on my nose technically, but anyways,
well, that's how they taste through that secondary.
Like, is it like a nose tackle and a running back, or a nose tackle and a corner?
Nose tackle and defensive back, I guess you would call it.
Okay, all right. So
because that makes more sense. I was about to say that.
Let me know when the first nose back comes into the NFL.
All right, the nose. It's like again the combo. We already went over that. Key subtractions.
It's away from 20, by the way. So smash that like button, folks.
Hit the like button, folks. Thank you for coming on this early morning. Key subtractions. You got Nickelback, Cameron Sutton, not noseback, Nickelback. Obviously went to the Lions. I think he's going to make a very good impact over there. Robert Spillane, more of a depth back. Devin Bush, a big disappointment. And Miles Jack, linebacker. 3 linebackers I've listed. They've essentially turned over the linebacking core. Storyline A, which is for the away team, was last season's hot streak for Brock Purdy, a mirage. Can he take San Fran over the top? My answer, I don't think it's a mirage, but I don't think he'll take San Fran over the top. Storyline H, Kenny Pickett, just for the home team, obviously. Kenny Pickett. They've put numerous pieces around this quarterback to essentially succeed. Offensive line is better. They have James Daniels, Mason Cole, and Isaac Seumalo in the interior. Tackles, I have question marks with. Dan Moore, I'm not a big fan of. Chu Okafor is okay. I think they could get away with starting Broderick Jones soon enough. Wide receivers, George Pickens, Allen Robinson, and Deontay Johnson. I think that's a very good wide receiver core, in my opinion. The Steelers love to add skill position players. They do not. All they do is draft good wide receivers. I know Claypool was kind of it wasn't really a dud, it was like a half dud. But running backs, you got Najee Harris and Jalen Warren out of the backfield. And again, the good skill position players, I think they have a solid offensive line. They're ranked 14th by PFF. My question is 2 things. They go right into each other. Does Kenny Pickett take the next step? Because I think he can. And how much does his offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, limit him? Because there have been questions around his play calling. As I've been talking to Steelers fans, they say, you know what? He runs the same goddamn plays every time. He's like a Randy Fichtner disciple. And Fichtner was not exactly well-liked in Pittsburgh. But it's going to be the biggest storyline. Pickett, passing the ball. I think Pickett's a better passer than Brock Purdy. But I think the Niners have the more formidable run game. I like the Steelers' offensive line better, but we'll get into that. I think the Steelers, how you beat this Niners team, I think it's going to be testing Kenny Pickett's arm, in my opinion. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's going to be a little bit of ground and pound, but I think the Niners really want to test Pickett's arm strength and his development into his second year. And obviously, there's a lot of chemistry, camaraderie with George Pickens. So my top matchups, I like George Kittle versus Minkah Fitzpatrick. You can kind of alternate.
There's a Sox question. He is trending to play.
Yes, he is trending to play. Going back to my matchups, George Kittle versus Minkah Fitzpatrick. It's a little interchangeable. I'll tell you why. Because you have Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, you're not going to be covering McCaffrey with a corner. McCaffrey versus Quan Alexander. I think that's how it's going to go. And you have George Kittle against Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's one of the best safeties, and I think he's still underrated in this league. You have Isaac Seumalo versus Javon Hargrave. You talk about new teams, new players. That's a match I'm very interested to watch. Definitely on the offense versus the defensive line. I already mentioned McCaffrey and Quan Alexander. Dre Greenlaw and Pat Freiermuth is going to be an interesting one to see how they target him. TJ Watt versus Colt McKivitz, already mentioned that one. And Cam Hayward versus Aaron Banks, testing the defensive line. Again, battle of the trenches. I think that's going to be the ultimate, decider in this one. In terms of position battles, I like the 9. I'd say hold on, let me think about this. Because I was asking John this question. He says he would take the Niners. I would actually say that Purdy's a proven passer right now, but I think Pickett has the higher ceiling and offer a better performance. So I think I'm going to go Pickett here, honestly, for quarterback position. Running backs, I like the Niners backs better. Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey, I think, are better than Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. Wide receivers, I know that the Niners have Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, but the Steelers also have George Pickens, Allen Robinson, and Deontay Johnson. I'm taking Pittsburgh all the way. Tight ends, George Kittle takes the cake all the way. Top 3 tight end in the league when healthy. Not much to say about that. Offensive line, I'm taking Pittsburgh. I think they've upgraded their front with Isaac Seumalo. I think Broderick Jones is waiting in the wings. I think he'll be a really good tackle once he starts. Heading to the defensive line, I'm taking San Francisco. Javon Hargrave, who's a sack monster, was originally a Pittsburgh product, by the way. And obviously you have him. You have Eric Armstead. Nick Bosa's coming back. But I don't expect him to answer Jacob's question. I don't expect him to be at full conditioning and full strength. So I don't think he'll make a whole lot of difference, but I think he'll make some difference. Linebackers, inside linebackers, because I have to compare the fronts. Niners run a 4-3. The Pittsburgh Steelers run a 3-4. Niners, I like their inside linebackers better. Obviously, I have Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers across the league, top 3, you could say. Outside linebackers, this goes to the pass rush for the Steelers. Nick Herbig, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. What do you got to say? Not much to say there except Pittsburgh's taking the cake. Secondary, I'm taking Pittsburgh as well. Minkah Fitzpatrick, you got him. You got Patrick Peterson, a reliable veteran. Who's their corner? Levi Wallace, I think he's okay. He's not the best, but I think carrying the unit with Patrick Peterson and Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think trumps the 49ers. I'm not saying the 49ers players are trash, but I think they got some pieces there that are going to help. I also like the addition of Keanu Neal from the Tampa Bay Bucks. I think he's going to be a big help as well. I forgot to mention in my notes, but I think he also could play some linebacker. But the Steelers take the cake when it comes to the secondary. As for the Niners, I think I have special teams. The Niners are better. But getting into my predictions before I give everybody else the floor, leading passer, I'm taking Kenny Pickett, 241 yards. Leading rusher, Christian McCaffrey, 95 yards on the ground. Leading receiver, George Pickens, 75 yards. Fred Warner will lead the tackles, or I should lead the linebackers with 7 tackles. And TJ Watt, 1.5 sacks today. Guys, take away with your predictions.
All right, I'll go next. I just want to type something in the chat. Betting questions. Or John, do you want to, or are we sponsored by Cheerios now?
Look, I was hungry. I saw we had some Cheerios. I'm like, let me rock this out on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, why not? I mean, that's probably going to be my breakfast once I get out of here. But for my predictions, as Luca goes to break up another cat fight, it seems. My predictions, well, I got Brock Purdy at 250 yards as the leading passer. I got Christian McCaffrey at 112 yards as the leading rusher. I got Brandon Ayuk, 6 receptions, 97 yards, and a touchdown. I got Minkah Fitzpatrick, 9 tackles as the lead tackler and the lead sacker. I might change this, honestly, because Nick Bosa, I mean, well, he's facing Dan Moore. He's also faced I don't know. I think I'm gonna go different. You know what? I'm gonna change it. Alex Highsmith's gonna get 2 sacks. Alex Highsmith, the Pittsburgh Steelers, is gonna get 2 sacks. So, John, if you got any predictions that you can improvise on before we move on.
With my Cheerios, we'll take a break. Sorry, folks, I have to eat. But nevertheless, I'll go through my predictions. I had them written down in my notes. Just give me a sec. All right. So, in terms of yards, Luca and I talked about it. I got Brock Purdy. I think he's going to throw for like 235. I'd say that's a reasonable number, 235. Lead rusher, McCaffrey. I'm going to go put him at 80, but I think he's going to have like all-purpose yards. I think it's going to be over 140. What Alex is calling a timeout.
Taylor Lewan has retired.
Ooh. Okay, so we have a retirement today.
And also, by the way, make sure we get those likes up. I was going to mention something else, but John, keep going ahead. Oh, by the way, this is what I was going to mention. Write these predictions down. So I think we should, honestly, do a point system. What I mean by that is if you're the closest, like we got 5 categories for predictions, other than the game predictions. If you're closest in one category, like if I'm closest to like lead receiver, I get a point. So something like that. But I'll let you continue.
Luca, would you mind writing them down in the doc while I eat these Cheerios?
Oh yeah, I'll write them down.
All right. So I said Brock at like 235, McCaffrey 80 rushing yards, but I think he's going to have all-purpose yards. I think he's going to have 150 as a little caveat. Leading receiver of the day, give me George Pickens. I'm going to say he has 80 yards today. 80 at George Pickens. The lead tackler, I'm actually going to say it's going to be Minkah Fitzpatrick today with 8. I think he's going to be all over the field today. Minkah Fitzpatrick's one of my favorite defenders. And the leading sack man, I'm going to go on the Niners. Nick Bosa, give me him at 1.5. Big boy got paid.
I'm going to ask John, even with him, barely having any condition on him, it's quite a risk in my opinion there, John.
It's risky, but be bold or go home.
Be bold or go home.
Okay.
That looks like he's 5.
Mm-hmm. Look, these are damn good. Okay.
I know they're good. I eat them for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want the what do they call that? The booster chair? What do they call that?
The high chair.
The high chair. Do you want the high
Sure,
chair,
yeah.
John?
As we got some comments about Cheerios. My kids call them O's. LOL. Greg is in favor of Cheerios. But I'm sorry. We also have some car disputes right now, as we got some honking. Trying to do a show Monday here to Sunday morning.
Today's Monday. Today's Monday.
Oh, could you cut it out? At least I didn't say taste the secondary.
Great. Then the Jets play today if it's Monday.
So what did the Giants do?
Nothing.
They tied.
No, fuck that. They did not tie. Cheerios are part of a balanced breakfast.
General Mills is better than Kellogg's.
But those are my stat predictions. But remember what the book says, guys. According to the book, we all picked the Steelers to win this game outright.
Again, Niners are what? 2-point favorites? I'm taking the Steelers.
I will ask John for this, right? According to the gracious book, how many times did we agree on picks?
Ooh, let's count.
Because our lives, our reputation is at stake here.
Agree. Like full sweep.
By the way, also, does anyone have any final thoughts on this game?
I think it's I'll just add one or two things. First off, not really a fan of the Niners passing attack today, especially if Kittle is hurt. And that man's had a huge injury history. And even Debo's had a huge injury history, which is not a fan of them being able to not spread it. They could spread the ball out, but I don't really feel like they have the ability to, get downfield if Purdy's hurt, or if he's affected at all.
By the way, I must say I'm sorry, but whoever reported, and it was on like good outlets too, Taylor Lewan did not retire.
Ooh, so we got false
reporting. By the way, I just want to say regarding this game, my prediction, I'm taking the Steelers 20-13.
20-13. Okay. That's a good prediction. And you also, for the Steelers, you mentioned the pass rush. Well, Trent Williams is the best left tackle in the game. So he's going to stop either TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith, but they're going to have to figure out who's going to play on that right side, who's going to have to take advantage, because the Steelers can generate with four guys pressure with 4 guys if they have to. They also can send the blitz, and you also have other guys in that lineup that can like obviously Cam Hayward's a really good, Larry Ananjobi on that line, really solid lineman. So they do have the guys, and that's going to be the key to them. They got to try and kind of like that old school. Not saying they need to put a bounty on Purdy, but like they need to get to the quarterback and knock him into next Tuesday kind of mentality. But my prediction, Steelers win this game, and so is Eric. But Alex, you asked the question, right? So we're also counting the Chiefs game because we all lost that one. Chiefs failed us. Boo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games we agree on. 12 games for a full sweep.
12 of 16. Our reputations are at stake.
12 games, and one of them we already lost.
So,
because they didn't taste the defense.
They didn't taste the secondary. They didn't have the proper nose back.
They didn't have the proper Cheerios either. Probably have like Honey Nut instead of regular.
Thank you, John. See, that's a good point right there.
Let me ask, is there such thing as a nose end?
What's wrong?
Are you just asking fucking stupid questions?
Yes.
Troll.
Nose end is more real than nose back. I mean, doesn't make any sense. But
Then make him a nickel tackle.
okay, one more comment like that, you're getting kicked. All right, so we got my game that I picked, and that's the Bengals versus the Browns. Now, of course, this is an old-fashioned AFC North rivalry. These two teams are going to compete, and I think all four teams really in that division are going to compete for the top of that division. And there's some odds, there's some storylines. So I'll get into storylines before the adds and subtractions. I think the top storyline for the Browns, who's the home team, by the way, I think their top storyline is Deshaun Watson's first full year in Cleveland. What is he going to show, right? Obviously, you got Nick Chubb back there. You got Mari Cooper. Last year in 6 games, he threw 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. A little bit more than a touchdown. A little bit more than a touchdown a game has to be with the weapons you have, with the teams you're facing in the AFC. You have to get more than a touchdown a game. Now, of course, Nick Chubb is a big part of that offense. I want to see how that balances out this year. They don't have Dearness Johnson. They don't have Kareem Hunt. So we'll see how that goes. And I also want to focus on the fact that it may be a hot seat year for Mr. Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, because I know there's some Browns fans that are calling for his head. If you take a look at his career record, he only has one over 500 season, 11-5 that COVID year, which they beat the Steelers, and then they lost to Kansas City in the divisional. They went 8-9-21. They went 7-10-22, which you could absolutely attribute to Deshaun Watson being out and Jacoby Brissett and all that sort of good stuff. But Deshaun Watson was 3-3 as a quarterback. So, again, goes back to this simple point. Now, the storyline for the Bengals is one that I'm not really that what a lot of people aren't really talking about is, people talking about Joe Burrow. What is he going to look like off the injury? I'm looking at their 2 new starting safeties, and Dax Hill, who's going to be getting full time this year, and Nick Scott, who they signed over from the Los Angeles Rams. So let's talk about key additions, key subtractions. This one is not being talked about by a lot of people. That's Orlando Brown to the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the best offensive tackles in the league. He said he wanted to play left tackle for a long time. Obviously was with the Chiefs for a little bit. Now he's with Cincinnati, and he's going to be showing up that left side, which moves Jonah Williams over to the right side, someone who was drafted in the first round of that 2019 draft. They also are still trying to, replace CJ Uzomah. They're getting Irv Smith, who missed 43% of games in his career due to injury. So they got to have backup depth and at least solid depth behind there. I mean, of course, it's not going to be a big focal point because you do have Jamar Chase, you do have T. Higgins, you do have Tyler Boyd, but their backups are Mitchell Wilcox and Drew Sample. You move on, of course. Nick Scott, 17 games last year, 16 starts, 2 interceptions, a 79.3 completion percentage allowed, and then 4 touchdowns with 118.5 passer rating. That's not very good. If they're using him in coverage situations, I don't expect him to be a big factor in a good way. But if he's a solid tackler, he had 86 tackles last year. I think he's going to be there with Dax Hill making some nice hits. DJ Turner, they did draft him. He is not planning on starting. Played 14 games last year for Michigan, was a second-round pick. Interception, 65.5 passer rating, a fumble recovery, and 36 tackles. Again, coming out of Michigan. Miles Murphy, who is the third-team defensive end. 13 games last year, 7 quarterback hits, 6.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and 2 pass deflections. They also added Cody Ford, who is a guy who is pretty much a journeyman at this point, was a failed second-round pick of the Buffalo Bills, 3 sacks, 2 penalties, 350 snaps, 11 games last year with the Arizona Cardinals as they were suffering in multiple different areas. And they also have a new punter in the building. That is Brad Robbins, who is also a Michigan guy. Now, you look at the stats, it's not great coming out of college from last year. 42.3 yards per punt. He was 10th out of 14 punters in the Big 12, or Big Ten. My apologies. But anyway, Big Ten. Again, my apologies. 16 punts inside the 20, 13 games. Key subtractions. They did get rid of 2 punters, that being Kevin Huber and Drew Krisman. Krisman was 13th in yards per punt last year. Kevin Huber was 32nd. So Krisman obviously was the better guy, but of course he's no longer with the team. The biggest subtraction, I would argue, is Jesse Bates, who signed a mega deal with the Atlanta Falcons to sort of improve that defense. And he allowed a completion percentage of 51.4, which is very good for a safety. 4 interceptions, 71 tackles, 4 touchdowns in 16 games. They also got rid of their other starting safety. That's Von Bell, who is now a Carolina Panther. 77 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 4 interceptions, 16 games, 8 pass deflections, 64 passer rating, 67.9 completion percentage allowed. So he's still a solid safety. I believe he's in his 30s now, but he's still a solid safety coming around, with New Orleans and a couple of different teams. So let's take a look at the Cleveland. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a look at this small note before we go into the Cleveland Brown additions and subtractions. Cam Taylor-Britt. Now, Eli Apple left, obviously, which has the Bengals that avoided cornerback 2, and it's slated right now to be Cam Taylor-Britt, who they selected last year in Nebraska, which not bad with completion percentage, 58.6, 3 touchdowns. The passer rating is a little high at 102.9, 55 tackles, 6 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. So from, a guy who didn't play much last year, I'm going to take a look and see how many games he played. Played a total of 10 games last year and started 9. So he does have solid starting experience, but he's going to get the bigger bulk right now. And I think it's going to be an immediate test against this Cleveland Browns offense. Now you do move to the Cleveland Browns. Cedric Tillman, who only played 6 games last year, but had a pretty solid career over in Tennessee, 37 receptions, 417 yards, 11.3 yards per reception, and 3 touchdowns. We'll get to this guy, who I'm pretty sure John and Luca, they're not fans of this guy. That's Elijah Moore, who the Jets decided to trade.
Ooh.
Yes, indeed. He is now their starting slot wide receiver. 16 games, 37 receptions, 446 yards, 1 touchdown, and 12.1 yards per reception. They also got Juan Thornhill, who's coming over from Kansas City. 16 games, 3 interceptions, 71 tackles, a sack, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits, 68.1 completion percentage, passer rating of 105.6, which isn't great, 5 touchdowns. One of the biggest additions, and this is why the Cleveland Browns defense is expected to take a next step, that is Darius Smith. Had a Pro Bowl nomination last year, 16 games, 44 tackles, 24 quarterback hits, 15 tackles for a loss, 1 forced fumble to go along with 10 sacks. This guy is still at an elite level. Obviously, he had injury concerns in 2021 when he didn't play for Green Bay. Went over to Minnesota. He wrecked it up. But I guess Minnesota couldn't keep him. So now he's on that other side, replacing Jadeveon Clowney, which is a huge upgrade for Cleveland. They also traded for Dustin Hopkins after Cameron Dicker won the kicking battle over in Los Angeles. They decided to trade Dustin Hopkins, and that's a solid fit. Yes, he only played 5 games last year, but was pretty accurate. 12 of 12 on extra points, 9 of 10 on field goals. They also traded for Pierre Strong, 15 games last year with New England. Not much at all, probably mostly special teams. 10 rushes, 100 yards. That's 10 yards per carry. 1 touchdown, 7 receptions, 43 yards, 5 kick returns for 115 yards. And this one I really like. We talked about it in the Hall of Fame game. DTR. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks coming out of college. Obviously, the Giants really didn't need a quarterback locking up Daniel Jones, but he was a guy I was watching for about 2-3 years. 69.6% completion, 27 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. I'm not going to get to the passer rating because that's extremely inflated in college. 3,169 yards, 118 rushes, 645 yards, and 12 touchdowns. This guy could be a very good backup in this league. Now, I don't know if they have the Jalen Hurts mentality of when Watson is gone, maybe DTR comes in or whatnot, but he's going to be a solid backup for the Cleveland Browns. I can tell you that much. He's a smart kid. He's got the duo threat ability. Maybe they do something like Jalen Hurts has just mentioned, like 2020, they brought in Hurts for rushing situations. Maybe they do that, kind of change it up a little bit. As far as key subtractions goes, I don't think they lost much. I'm going to be honest with you. Jadeveon Clowney, who only had 12 quarterback pressures and 2 sacks in 12 games last year. Taven Bryan was rotational defensive lineman, 16 games, 3 sacks, 26 tackles, 6 quarterback hits, 6 quarterback pressures. Jacoby Brissett, who started most of the year, was 4-7 with the Browns, 16 games total, because obviously he was a backup too. 64% completion, 2,608 yards, 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, a passer rating at 88.9, 49 rushes, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. They also lost Dearness Johnson, who had only 4 carries for 17 yards last year. So we got into the storylines. Now let's look at the top matchups. I'm looking at, and this is interchangeable, of course, but I'm looking at Zadarius Smith versus Jonah Williams. Jonah Williams, I believe, is still looking to earn that second contract. He was a first-round pick. Injuries have riddled his career, but one of the biggest talking points and one of the biggest moments he's going to have is going up against Zadarius Smith, who just dominated last year. Orlando Brown versus Myles Garrett. That's going to be a matchup that maybe some people don't look at because it's power against power, top against top, but Orlando Brown versus Myles Garrett. I'm looking to see what Cam Taylor-Britt does against either Donovan Peoples-Jones, who I was looking at when he was in college, and he was very good, and I was happy when the Browns drafted him, or Elijah Moore, the former New York Jet, of course. Denzel Ward versus Jamar Chase is one of the highly anticipated ones to watch out for. I think it's going to be very interesting. Ward still top corner in this league when healthy. Jamar Chase, we know what he can do. Jack Conklin versus Trey Hendrickson or Sam Hubbard. Both are solid pass rushers. Hendrickson continuing his reign after that solid year he had with the Saints in 21. And then the other side is going to be Jedrick Wills versus one of those pass rushers. And Wills, despite what most people think, he hasn't had a great career, isn't living up to that hype as a former Cleveland Browns first round draft pick. So before we get into the predictions, stuff like that, I do want to talk about position battles. I think Cincinnati, they win the quarterback battle. Obviously, Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty. Running back room, I think that goes to Cleveland, to be honest. Joe Mixon is obviously in for Cincinnati, but I just like Nick Chubb. I think he's a player in this league that, he's consistent. He's one of the more consistent running backs. He's not getting paid a shit ton. I think he's got $10 to $12 million per year. That's the running back market nowadays. And he could do both. He could catch passes out of the backfield. He is a guy you can rely on. Is he a bell cow back 100%? I wouldn't say all the way, but you know what? The Cleveland Browns have found success in that area, and I think they will continue to do so. Wide receivers, I'm going with Cincinnati. Obviously, your top 3 starting is Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Tight end room, it's not much of a battle, but I'm going to go ahead and say David Njoku and the Browns tight end room really overtakes the tight end room for the Bengals. In terms of the offensive line, I'm going to take Cleveland a little bit. I know there's some shiny new pieces for the Cincinnati Bengals, but Joel Bitonio is one of the more solid starting guards you'll find in this league. Wyatt Teller, they completely turned around from Buffalo, and Jack Conklin is a solid tackle in this league, has been for years now. And also, there's 2 things I want to add in. Maybe DeJuan Jones, who impressed during the preseason, he gets some snaps during the regular season if somebody gets hurt or if Jedrick Wills doesn't play up to par. And also, they have a big coaching factor, and that's going to be Mr. not Frank Pollock, that's the Bengals. Bill Callahan, he's one of the best, if not the best, O-line coach in this league, and he's going to go out there and coach the hell out of this offensive line. You take a look at D-line, which includes edge. I'm going to go ahead and say Browns all the way. Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson, who they added from the Minnesota Vikings. You have Zadarius Smith as well. I think that overtakes talent-wise, and it's a tough one. You could go either way. I think that overtakes anything Cincinnati has, my personal opinion. You look at inside linebackers, it's not much of a battle. It's a lot of improvement. It's a lot of unknown. But I'm going to go ahead and say Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson for the win for the Cincinnati Bengals. Secondary, I'm going to talk about that. Safeties and corners. As far as corners go, I'm going to have to go ahead and say the Cleveland Browns take this one. As far as the safeties goes, I'm actually going to go ahead and say the Cleveland Browns too. And then finally, for special teams, I will take Cleveland by a nose hair. Corey Bojorquez was one of the top punters in the league last year in yards per punt. They do get Dustin Hopkins, who is a reliable kicker when healthy. So Before we get into the predictions and we start closing out the show, do we have any thoughts from the panel as I plug in my computer charger?
John?
I'm sorry, I'm just writing in the last of something. But I'm gonna say this for the Browns and Bengals. And Alex noted it. That and Jets Mets. What's up, man? Thank you for
What up,
joining.
Jets Mets?
Well, you just caught the tail end. But nevertheless, you look at this Brown secondary that you mentioned, Alex, and you match that up with the elite weapons that the Bengals have. Because let's face it, I mean, this, in my opinion, the Bengals have the best wideout starting core in the NFL with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. All guys are capable of going off, all right? Chase and Higgins are basically number ones, and Boyd, you can put in the slot, you can put in the outside. Very special player there. But Denzel Ward, despite the injury history, still a top corner in this game. You add Juwan Thornhill, who's questionable, but it gives him veteran experience. Grant Delpit's been a ball hawk. Greg Newsom's still trying to prove himself in this league as a younger corner. I forgot what draft he was taken. I think it was 2 seasons ago, or 2 drafts ago.
Which player?
Newsom, the corner.
Yeah, I want to say first or I want to say late first. I could check that out.
Right.
And Jets Mets, you don't have to worry. We know West
you're
Coast
good. You're
time.
good, man.
You
Don't
know,
worry.
it's very early over there.
Don't worry. Nevertheless, I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup. And the other interesting matchup that I did want to point out is that Browns offensive line against the Bengals front 4. You know, Hubbard and Hendrickson, proven guys that can get to the quarterback. DJ Reader, BJ Hill, very solid against the run, actually. But you look at that Browns offensive line, they've been a very solid unit for a while. Very underrated, very solid. Wyatt Teller is a very elite guard in this game. Obviously, you got some good on the tackles with Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin. Pochitz is not a bad center. Batinho's they're a veteran who's been there a while. He's made Pro Bowls before. So that is a very good group, a very cohesive group that has chemistry. So we talk about so many offensive line problems. The Browns don't have that. You know, they run the football very well. Obviously, we know about Nick Chubb there being there now. They're one of their star players. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Now, remember in the picks, boys, you boys had the Bengals winning this game. I got the dog pound Browns winning. All right, that's where I'm going in this game. Luca, if you had any thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I don't know what the weather's going to be in Cleveland, but regardless, it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, divisional rivals battling it out.
It's gonna be raining. Actually, hold on. Let me see. They play at 1. 15% chance of precipitation. So, go either way.
So, I think this game possibly could be dominated by the passing attack. I'm not going to see. I'm interested to see if the Browns are going to target the Bengals corners and safeties and attack their linebackers with more. Who else? Amari Cooper as well. Donovan Peoples-Jones. Those guys. I'm interested to see how they attack the linebacking core and the safeties and the corners. Test that secondary out because it has lost some pieces over the past year. Cedric Tillman, I expect to be a part as well. So that'll be interesting. Bengals, they're going to test Denzel Ward a lot with obviously Jamar Chase. That's going to be, as Alex put down, one of the better matchups. I'm expecting also, that's what I'm expecting. Expecting to test the safeties as well. So I think it's going to be, it could go one of two ways, obviously. It could either be a defensive game where the secondary is airtight for both teams, or it could be a shootout where you could see Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson trying to match each other's numbers. So, as John said, we're taking the Bengals. He's taking the Browns. I'm taking the Bengals, obviously. But could it be a shootout? It could be. There's a possibility. But again, as John mentioned, Joe Burrow is slightly hurt.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, we'll get into final predictions here because this is the final subject here. So I'm going to go ahead and say Joe Burrow, 267, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Lead rusher, Nick Chubb, 15 carries, 134 yards, touchdown. Jamar Chase, 9 receptions, 90 yards and a touchdown. I think he will be limited just a bit. Logan Wilson, 12 tackles, and lead sacker. I think Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett get 1.5 sacks each.
Okay. I'll go next with my predictions. My predictions are my lead passer is going to be Joe Burrow, 285 yards. My leading rusher will be Nick Chubb, 98 yards. My leading receiver is Jamar Chase with 107 yards. Leading tackler, I'm actually going to have Denzel Ward with 8 tackles. And my lead sacker, I think Myles Garrett will get a sack. He'll taste the offensive line.
Is he the nose back?
God. That's right, folks. We're making up terms as we go along. All right, so you learned some new things today. My stat predictions: Joe Burrow, 245 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Nick Chubb, 115 yards and a touchdown. Leading receiver, G. Higgins, 7 receptions, 130 yards. Lead tackler, Jermaine Pratt with 7 tackles. And then Trey Hendrickson, 1.5 sacks. He's the lead sack for everyone.
All right. So before we get out and before I answer these questions, I do want to put this on paper. I think we got to predict everyone. Now, obviously, we have already predicted win-loss. But I did mention that point system. I say we predict the scores of each of these games. So I guess we could start out with this one.
Alex, you write this down?
Yeah, I'm going to put this down in the doc. So,
okay.
Let's start out with Luca.
This is the Bengals game?
This is the Giants game. This is the Bengals game, yes.
I'm just double checking. You know, I'll take an ass whooping for it, but I know as such. But anyways, Bengals, Browns. I'm going to go 27-17 Bengals.
Okay, John?
24-20 dog pound.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go 28-17 Cincinnati. All right. Next up, San Fran against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to Super Bowl.
The Steelers are going to the Super Bowl, and they're going to start by winning 20-13.
Okay, John?
I got the Steelers winning this one 17-14.
Okay. All right. So low scoring game. I'm gonna go 20-17 Steelers. All right. So then finally, let's go to the Bears versus the Green Bay Cheeseheads. Luca.
I'm taking the Bears.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I'm bringing out the football. It's football season, you know?
Christ.
But anyways, the Bears, they're going to win. I'm going to go – it's going to be a low-scoring one, honestly, because the ground game, 24-14, Bears.
Okay, John?
I'm going to go with 30-27 Packers.
30-27?
Mm-hmm.
That high scoring, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So Luca's still got that balloon. Dog pound, let's ride.
So dog pound.
It's kind of siding. Put it down in the handy dandy notebook. Yes.
That's right. Jacob loves it.
134. Wow. Yeah. I mean, listen, I have confidence that Nick Chubb will get that. But again, we'll see with the points system we're going to do, who's right and whatnot. Tomorrow, it is not the podcast. I'm just going to make that clear now. It's not Boys in Big Apple. We'll do that next Monday. Tomorrow night, we'll dedicate to these two and their team, and whether they lose or they win or do whatever that nonsense. But
fuck him.
He is such a we got a fight, ladies and gentlemen. Round 1. Ding ding ding.
man, okay. Clown. Anyway, I guess we'll start with final thoughts. I mean, 2 hours, 19 minutes. Jester Smith says jet up.
That's right.
2 hours, 19 minutes. It's going to be 2 hours, 20 minutes because obviously, we're going to take a little bit with our final thoughts. But I'll start with Luca.
Final thoughts. Thank you, everybody, for coming out to the premiere of the Rise and Rush podcast. Episode 1 was a success, in my opinion. Thank you to Joe Manniello from Newsday for coming out. He obviously gave us his insight on his picks, his best bets, as we call it. John did an excellent job with the bets as well. Good show today overall. Football is back, and I'm going to press the football.
Everybody's frowning upon us.
Just going to leave that there.
And we got one more like to 20, folks. One more like. Smacky to like. John?
Well, ladies and gents, what did we learn this morning? We learned some new terms today of we got nosebacks and tasting the secondary. So we can thank Luca for adding those vocabulary
Thank you,
words.
Luca.
So that's great. But no, we had a lot of fantasy advice, a lot of betting advice, some game previews in there. We also know that the book is very important, and that the Cheerios are the way to go. But nevertheless, guys, I'm ready to sit on my ass today and watch football.
6 hours of football.
I was gonna say all day, but
right.
As we have a football head now, that's amazing.
Yeah, he's turned into a football head. We got Stewie from Family Guy. Okay. I would say Luca puts on the Giants helmet, but of course that's their Giants.
Absolutely
so
not. That's sacrilegious.
Well, you mean you did that one time when you were impersonating Daniel Jones, but okay. I learned that John eats Cheerios at 12 in the afternoon. I haven't had breakfast yet.
It's not 12 yet.
Might be me. John casually eating Cheerios. But I do want to say thank you to everybody who's come out for the Rise and Rush podcast debut. I know we had some new people in here asking about fantasy advice, and this is going to happen every single Sunday. I think we'll stick with the time, honestly, because with the way we did this, it leads up to, the CBS Today and the NFL Today and all that sort of stuff and all your pregame shows and whatnot. It gives you an hour of rest so we actually get to watch the games and finally enjoy some red zone football and all that other good stuff. But yeah, as I said, tomorrow night we'll be doing the Jets-Bills game, so join us for that, even if you're not a Jets-Bills fan or any of that sort of stuff. Tuesday, Big Lou in the Bronx podcast will be talking about the Cowboys-Giants game, which is tonight. We won't be streaming that for reasons that we all know. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe, do all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops through drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Also, as well, I forgot to advertise this as well, but might as well do it at the end of the show. We are sponsored by SeatGeek, so if you are going to a concert, you need parking passes for MetLife Stadium or any other stadium, or you're going to a game in general, we can help you out. Just get $20 off your ticket order with the promo code Big Blue in the Bronx. It's Big Blue in the Bronx, the name of the channel, name of the podcast. It's nothing abbreviated, none of that crap, but share that out to folks. It's football season. Tickets are expensive, so you might as well get any discount you can get. Anyway, guys, it's been fun. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll see you back here tomorrow night for Jets, Bills, Monday Night Football.